I have just finished a 3+ hour conversation with Reddy, our conversation number two. And I just love Reddy. I love his mind. I love the depth and the width of him. It's just amazing. And as you can see, I'm wearing a tiara, which I probably should have taken it off because I don't have it on when we start. But somewhere along the line, I go fetch it and put it on. Yeah. It's like this is 3 hours of just 3 hours of play in the most amazing way. Intellectual play, intuit, intuitive play, bodily play. Like we go along so many facets of this. Um, and well, I guarantee, I almost want to guarantee that you'll have a fun time with us. So I hope you stick around. Um, and maybe the question is, want to play? Good. You look so cool.
Oh, thank you. So this is my new avatar. I went to the store to get new glasses and I saw these shades there and I was like, I need to get these. And they were like, yes, but these are shades and you're looking for power glasses. And I was like, okay, can we do one thing where you take off these are really dark shades. So I got them take those off. I got these yellow frames and then I got these power glasses in. And then apparently I was trying to get this thing called blue light filter so that I
Mhm.
spend all this time I spend on the screen is not as harmful as it can be. And then I suddenly realized that, you know what? What if I have it like tinted? Like I have these apps on on my phone and on the computer, which kind of turn the screen into like a reddish tint. So I was like, what if I turn my whole life like with rose tinted glasses? What would it look like? And so here we are. This is essentially what I came up with. It's an experiment, and I'm trying to see if it actually feels warmer. It feels like initially everything felt like a sepia tone, right? So it just felt like I just put a nostalgia filter over my entire life. Yeah. So that's where I'm at right now.
That's where you're at right now. Well, it looks good. And I like your new background. You painted it with, is it that chalk paint that you
Oh
can paint, draw on with
yes,
chalk?
yes. So like I've actually I still haven't found enough. Like I've been like looking around for all different colored chalks. I have this idea where I'm going to do like some sort of a time lapse where I just start scribbling and doodling, and then I just like collapse the whole thing into a short time frame video where it just looks like I'm just like this one of these mad scientists who's just like running across the wall doing stuff. Yeah. So that's it's kind of like I feel that it's before this I had like the white wall, right, which you'd seen before, and it just had this feeling that I was like everything feels very dull and plain in the sense that it didn't feel like there was some sort of depth, right? Like I just felt like I was this 2D image,
Mm.
right? Like you don't see depth of vision. Like behind you, there's enough of space behind you, so the idea of depth comes in clearly. But when I have a wall right behind me and it's like white, it almost looks like I'm a poster on the wall.
Mm.
So,
You
and
lack a
somehow I
you
feel
lack a dimension.
yes,
Mm.
exactly, right? And I feel like that comes across as in the digital world because we're limited to this form of interaction. Every single thing counts, like just the color there, the color here, what I'm wearing, the curtain, anything and everything around just brings some form of context and some form of depth to the character that we play on screen, right? So I always try my level best to kind of bring something that adds, like in this case, the color was something that I wanted to add warmth with, right? Like white essentially reminds is like meant to be the color of purity and cleanliness and simplicity and all of that. But it's also very clinical, like, and spending a lot of time in hospitals, in offices where it's almost always a bland color. So I was like, how can I show warmth on screen, right? And so I started looking for deep, rich colors. Like the color you're wearing is such a lovely color. It's deep, it's rich, it's like burgundy, maroon. It's like that. It has so much depth to it, right? And I was like, okay, so I'm just trying to find ways in which even if we spend like 2 minutes on a call or whether it's 2 hours on a call, there has to be so many subliminal cues that we pick up from each other. And so sometimes I practically spend 3 days on this to bring about this experience. And most people may not even register that all of this happened, but like subliminally, these clues do make a big difference, I feel.
So I get curious, what like what happens in your brain that kind of sparks what's the first spark? What's the first spark to think that, okay, glasses, okay, different wall. Do you know that? Or is it just that you're constantly like sparking?
I guess, one of the things is that I feel like when I wear clothes, it's it's kind of like a reflection. Like when the person on the other side sees what I'm wearing or see what's around me, it triggers certain responses in them, which I then perceive, right? Like, so what you're observing gets documented inside of you. And then based on that, your responses come out. Like, it could be conscious, like, in which case you're like, hey, I hate that color. That color gives me childhood nightmares. So, like, I really wish you weren't wearing that. Like, some people are very vocal. Some people would know it, but wouldn't say it. And some people wouldn't know it at all. And I feel like today, most people don't know it. Most people aren't aware enough about what triggers them in a pleasant way or in an unpleasant way, right? Especially if it's to a lesser degree. If it's something that's very stark, well, then yes. And in those cases, people may walk away from that meeting not knowing exactly why. And I think this comes back to something like vibes. Like, I get good vibes from this person, I get bad vibes from that person. I don't quite like being with that individual. And a lot of times we can't really pinpoint why, but it's just like a gut feeling. And I go to great lengths here. It seems like ridiculous, but I like to go to great lengths because I feel like color plays a big role. Like the color that hits our eyes, like goes into the retina, goes to the brain, and color stimulates moods in us, right? Like I feel like this is why children's play schools and playgrounds are so bright, so colorful. They're trying to evoke that mood of joy, of excitement, of enthusiasm, and all of the different moods and energies and feelings that different colors bring about. That's why there's no one single color. There's just like all of them, And and I feel like that's something that I'm trying to do. Like, what can I do that brings about some joy, even if it's just a minor spark of joy, comfort, ease in the other person who meets me. And in this case, it's online. So
So just a second.
okay.
So couple of weekends ago, I met up with my three wives. And I was the last to be picked up. Um, and when I got in the car and gave me a box and said, pick one. And so I picked a tiara, right? Because all of the other ones were also in a tiara. And it was just the most, it's like this one, I made it in August last year of 2020. I was watching Game of Thrones and knitted this one, right? And I don't think I've ever had a piece of clothing that I so love. So I've probably worn it like 300 days since August of last year. And if you look at the video of these pods, I don't know, 90% of them, I'm in this one. And I realize that some people might think, doesn't she have any other clothes? It's like, because you're not supposed to have the same type of clothes every day. And I'm basically wearing this every day. And I wear my jeans every day. It's like, so I just do this. So there's not a lot of frivolous and glamour and glitter in me, right? So the tiara, okay, putting it on. And I'm like, oh, I feel so good. I love this. So I was basically wearing this tiara for 24 hours. And then we were leaving. The other ones gave their tiaras back because Susan, who's the tiara queen, she has a whole box of them. She uses them on Fridays, I think. Fridays is tiara days. She's a principal at school. So it's like, it's
Uh-huh.
perfect, right? And I was like, and she said, you know, everything I own is yours, right? Do you want it? It can come stay with you. No, yes, I don't want to take it off. So I was sitting, I got a ride halfway home, and then the last few hours I was put on a train to do, and I just wore this. And people on the train are like, going, looking at me, smiling. Some young kid were like popping up over the seats to look at me. And I just, it felt so good. And it's a little bit big for me. I have to have it kind of on top of my head. And I can't lean forward or backward. I have
Oh
to
yeah.
have kind of a regal posture,
Yeah.
right? But it's at the same time, I feel very free in it. Um, So it's one of these things where I haven't worn it since I got back, but that weekend, I had it for breakfast and lunch and dinner and, out walking, and I just had it on. Uh, and it's interesting what happens with things when we put things on or take them off, right? It's like
Yeah.
because they have impact, influence on me and on others. Like, again, my posture, it comes with this tiara. My posture has to be there. I can't be slumping because the tiara will fall off and that doesn't feel comfortable. Um,
That's beautiful. Like, and it matches perfectly with what you're wearing, right? It's just like it's reflecting of what you feel, and that's interesting. When you said that, you've been wearing this every single day, and it's something that you like wearing, and I feel like that again reflects consistency, right? If I were meeting you every single day, if I was like passing by on the street and I see you every single day, the same thing, like in my mind, even if I didn't know who you were, even if I had absolutely no idea who you were, I would subconsciously believe that you're a dependable, consistent, trustworthy individual. Because my mind gets these signals that says, every time I see this lady, she's wearing that same outfit, right? So there's this constant repetitive programming happening that says, "Oh, she's going to be wearing this. I know this. If I see you at the same time, it's like, oh, I know she's going to go for a walk at the same time. She's going to be wearing this." Like I feel like that's it's a way in which we can offer some sort of trust towards people, right? Like if you know that this is like even the idea of you wearing the crown, like if I would recognize, like your royalty, right? And in my mind, it's like, so royalty is going to behave like this. So I can expect some sort of dependable, trustworthy behavior that this regal royal individual is going to behave or along these traits, right? And I feel like there's so much we can communicate with each other without even speaking, right? And I want to use that. I want to use all of these. subliminal cues to give off um, some sort of communication which I may not have the time and bandwidth to do so with each individual, or I may miss that particular point that I want to give out. But the moment I wear something, I accessorize, I dress up a certain way, I portray myself a certain way. These give out messages which I intend to if I'm doing it consciously, and without intention, unintendedly, if I'm being a little lackadaisical about how I'm portraying myself to the world.
Mhm. Yeah, and it is interesting because I have been quite consciously noticing, again, noticing my reactions to me wearing the same clothes every day, you know? Um, and I have what I've also been wearing for the past year is basically three pairs of jeans, all of which I have mended. And this makes for lousy audio, but I can kind of show you. So he was like,
Ooh.
I've been, this is fun. And then on the other leg, I've been making like little roses or whatever you can kind of look
Oh,
like flowers.
funky.
Um,
Yeah. Like snowflakes, even.
like snowflakes. Yeah, precisely. And it's fun because this is also something I've been considering. I do a lot of work from home. No problems, whatsoever. I also do some work um, as a consultant, as a professional quality consultant in the pharmaceutical industry, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, where's the limit? How can I push this? I don't have any like dressed up, you know, like bankers' clothes. The what you look, bankers, everybody has an image. It's like, okay, very proper and, costume or a dress for a lady. And it's like, I don't own it. Right? I don't have that at all. So it's like, how how can I push it? Can I wear these jeans if I'm at a customer site, And can I do it if there's an audit from somebody else? It's like, ooh. So I'm I'm kind of deliberately playing with my edges, which of course are influenced by my beliefs about others' edges, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um and
Oh,
this poncho, it's just, I've knitted a lot in my life, but this one is just smack on. It's the thing. It's the one. It's like I do so love it. And it's and then I'm hoping my love for it will radiate through, even though maybe someone will go, "Oh no, not that one again." But then again, I don't actually think people think that because I'm the center of my universe. You're the center of your universe. I'm the one who knows that, okay, I wore this one last time we met, and the time before that, and the time before that. Whereas you know, lots of you consciously picking up on it are like,
yeah.
probably not, because you're the center of your universe, right?
Yes.
Um, so we kind of have this belief that since I'm the center of my universe, I have to be the center of your universe too. And then you go, no, sorry, that would be you are the center of your universe. I'm like, what? You mean you don't notice everything I do? Sorry, dude.
This is so incredibly, you know, amazing in terms of just feeling right now what I'm feeling, just discussing this idea because I feel like we're right now like two superheroes like discussing the kind of like, oh, you know what? This is the costume I've been wearing. And so what do you think? Like, it just feels like we're sharing notes on costumes and like origin stories of why I decided to go with an outfit without a cape and why I decided to get one with the cape or why I wear my underwear outside. And, all of this stuff, it just feels like in the general world, most people don't give this much thought. I mean, like the idea of thought behind what I wear is probably just like, okay, is this acceptable in the environment that I'm going to enter? Like, that's about it. That's probably it. And if you can take it up a notch, it's like, okay, is this going to get me eyeballs? Am I going to be seen as the fashionable one? And the flip side of that is, okay, I hope I actually don't get attention because I don't want people to notice me, right? Like, that's another way if you look at it. But the individualism involved in dressing up is I've is something I feel like is almost lost to most people, right? Because if I were to think, how do I feel today, right? And how can I express that to the world, to everyone I meet and come across in a way that is immediately recognizable without me having to say a word and without them having to actually listen to what I'm saying. But the moment there's some sort of eye contact or, some sort of proximity, they're going to pick up on this and they're going to feel, like you said, wearing that poncho makes you feel awesome, makes you feel loving, makes you feel, loved. And every single person would pick up on that key, right? Would pick up on that energy, that vibe, because they're like, okay, why do I feel loved in front of this individual? Why do I feel loved around this individual? And it's like, oh, it's because she's probably feeling that. And I'm trying to voice this now, but in most cases, it doesn't happen. It's just that I feel it. If I were in your presence right now and you're feeling wonderful, I would start feeling wonderful. I may or may not attribute it to you, but you have certainly made a dent in my universe because I suddenly feel love emanating from this individual, from this person who has entered my universe, right? And if I find that that love is what I'm looking for, that energy is what I'm looking for, I would happily make you the center of my universe just so that I can bask in that energy that you're bringing, right? And wow, like I had never connected all of this, but this, this is like, it's like a seesaw. Like I can focus on just how this makes me feel, or I can focus on how it makes others feel. Either ways, it can come back to me, right? Either ways, it can start from here and go towards you, or it could start from you and come towards me. And I feel like just allowing this sort of a flywheel, like if you wear that and it makes you happy, and then seeing you happy makes me happy, and then seeing me happy makes you happy. Voila!
Yep. Yep. Positive spiral. Yeah. We
Yeah.
have in Swedish you can say tillstånd smittar, which basically means the state that I'm in is contagious. So make sure that the state I'm in is worthy of being,
Mm,
spread, right? Um, which kind of brings it back to me. It's like my energy, my responsibility, right? How I how I am in the world will have an impact, right? And I'm flashing back to a moment in early childhood when I was made to wear pantyhose that I hated. I hated. I put them on and just my entire body just screamed, take them off. I don't want this on me. And as a small kid, maybe, I think I was quite loud. So maybe I was allowed to not have them on, but I can also imagine me and other kids, we're kind of forced to have it because you're supposed to, because it's cold outside or warm outside or whatever it is, right?
yeah.
And on that, my state is contagious. The state that I'm in is contagious. If I'm wearing something that my entire body just feels allergic to, man, am I sending out some vibes that are not necessarily that, generative to others,
Yeah.
right? Because it's like, oh, now I'm going to start to feel really uncomfortable here without actually knowing where does that come from. Um, So that was the one thing I was thinking. The other thing I was thinking was back in 2007, I started to work on a project where we were building a facility outside Mumbai in India. And I visited Mumbai 7, 8 times just for a week or two each time. But at that time, I had more of the bankers type clothes, even though they weren't really bought as that. It was like I had, a pair of black pants or, something like that. And what I think of when I think of bankers is this dark, somber colors. Don't stick
Yeah.
out. Don't do anything. Right. So I like whenever I went down there, I grabbed all the black, fancy clothes that I could wear that would make me look proper. And then one day, VJ, who was the CEO of the site in India, we had lovely conversations. He was just marvelous. He looked at me and he said, Helena, why do you wear black all the time? And I told him, this is me trying to be respectable and responsible and look kind of smart and not stick out and anything. And he looked at me and he said, do you know that at least where he came from in India, and he said, black is kind of the color of revolution. It is like, and that was in the time when it was the Orange Revolution in the Ukraine. So he said, it's kind of like wearing orange in Ukraine. And I went, oh my God, am I like looked upon as if I come here as a revolutionist? Some radical person. And whereas what I was wanting to portray was this respectful, somber professional, and that just made me go, oh, sod it. It's like, I can't win. So it's like, okay. So after that, I consciously wore more colored clothes that was more me, right? I kind of let go of that persona, of that type of costume, of trying to be the superhero that I was so not, because I had my messages mixed up. It's like, I didn't know the context of the place that I was in. Um, so it can kind of, you can send out signals that you don't know of if you're in a different cultural context or a different context. Um,
And it's also like, it's interesting, right? Like, because the idea of that particular color, each color means something at a certain time and in a certain place to a certain person, right? Like it could even come down as individually as that one color not going down well with one person, or it could move across civilizationally where everyone in that culture, that country feels like, oh my God, like, like something's amiss, something's wrong. Like if you wear white all the time, like from top to bottom, you're probably in India, especially, you probably either be a politician, you'll either be a gangster, or someone in your family is just done.
Precisely, precisely.
Right?
Buddhist women, nuns wear
Yeah,
white too.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So and that, oh wow, like this is interesting. Like, how did it make you feel in terms of the choice of materials? Like, because like the choice of material that you are knitting is a fabric, is a texture that you're feeling. You've made it with your own hands, as in like you put it together. Versus just picking up a dress suit from across, from a store, and then it's probably going to be polyester, rayon, nylon, a bunch of other chemicals, or not chemicals, a bunch of other, materials which feel alien to the body, which also don't transmit light and heat in the right way. It probably either just traps it or it doesn't allow it in, and then, like doesn't allow your sweat to go out into atmosphere, just doesn't allow this kind of a movement, a free flow of either air, energy, fluids, all of that. I feel like that's an aspect that most of us, again, aren't really spending enough time being conscious of, right? Like, this is something that I've never ever thought of until a few months ago. Just a month ago, I guess, I went through my entire wardrobe and I was like, oh my God, like I'm not wearing this, I'm not wearing that, I'm not wearing this, I'm not. And I've just brought it down to cotton, to khadi, to linen. I'm just trying to look for materials which are not even blends, right? Because I found that I was so hooked on to blends because if I wear something like that has some sort of stretchy material blended into it, then it becomes convenient. Like right now I'm like, it's a little stiff around the edges because if I wear it too loose then it's just going to hang. If I wear it too tight then it's uncomfortable, and it's so hard to find that right space between them. But when you have the luxury of that blend, then you have a different kind of comfort in terms of mobility, but then you also miss out on the fact of how it feels when it's hugging your skin. So
And I am, you know, that story about the pantyhose was true. Like, I have had that experience, I think, all my life. So this this red poncho is made from I'm knitted it from organic wool. Right. So basically, if I knit anything or if I do anything with yarn, I want it to be organic. It can be cotton, it can be linen, it can be wool. I prefer wool because I just, like you say, it's warm. When it needs to be warm, it can be cooling. When it needs to be cooled, it transmits body fluid and retains, and it's even self cleansing. A wool, mm, knitted wool. If you spray it with a little bit of water and just let it hang, or if it's a moist day, you just hang it outside. It will clean itself.
oh,
It's just an amazing material. And I don't have, more or less, I don't have any like that functional, clothes like shirts and stuff. And my kids still do now and again. And when I wash them, it's like I have to hang them up and I go, oh, I never want this on my body. It's not painful, but I really don't like the way that it feels just touching them, just hanging them on a hanger to dry, or folding them when they are dry. It's like, ah, it's like I really don't I really don't appreciate or feel it. There isn't any positive energy coming into my system from them. Whereas if I touch this one, Mm, it's just, you know, it's lovely. It's really, really lovely to touch, right? So I'm quite conscious about that too. Um, and I'm like, I've been vegetarian for 6 years, and before that, I was a flexitarian, avoiding like industrial meat for another 6 years or something. So, but I've never been interested in going um off wool or leather or honey or beeswax or, you know, those types of materials. Honey isn't a material, but beeswax is.
it
Um,
has texture, right?
right? It's like I don't that's not, even though I fell into becoming a vegetarian and flexitarian for ethical reasons. I've been staying vegetarian because it makes me feel good. But I'm not, it's like I don't want to not have wool.
Yeah.
So going vegan, no, because I don't, and you don't have to. You can be vegan and not have wool and leather and all of those and still not have to go into the functional, like the artificial way that I think today a lot of veganism has become. It's like I want I want the real deal. I want the real materials, the real fruits, the real foods. I don't want the blends, let's remove milk and then add some weird weird stuff to get the same texture as you would if it had been milk-based. It's like, "No, thank you." It doesn't, again, there's no positive vibes. There's no positive energy drawing me to it. It's rather, "Mm, no, thank you," pushing me away. Um,
Yeah. Even from us, like, even if it's not consciously pushing away, I feel like the body reacts in different ways, right? Like when I wear something that doesn't feel comfortable, and I can feel my skin react. I can feel the way my skin changes. Like I might feel like it's not an obvious rash, but there are times when things flare up, and then I'm like, well, what do I do? I mean, like nothing's wrong. I don't. I check my diet, and I'm going through, and everything seems fine. Nothing's changed, and the environment doesn't really change much. And then it strikes me that is it the clothes? Like that seems to be the only thing that is making contact with my skin, right? And I feel like that's something that I hadn't been paying attention to for years, for forever, right? And now that I've started paying attention to it, I realize now that I feel so comfortable wearing clothes. Whereas if you like, a month ago, I'm just the kind of person who's just like waiting to get out of all my clothes. It's just like I just want to run naked in the wild, eureka, eureka. Like, I'm just like, I mean, like, I'm an Indian. I grew up in a tropical country. We're not even meant to wear clothes. Like, why am I even wearing clothes? We don't even need to wear clothes, right? So, but it makes me wonder. Like, I used to wonder, like, what's it? Why do I have this overwhelming obsession to like just get home and just tear
get rid
everything
of it.
off me, right? And now it struck me, this is why. It's because this is annoying. My skin is is revolting. My skin is revolting against this onslaught of this material, like laying siege to my skin and not allowing for this healthy transmission of the environment and my body. And now I feel so comfortable. Now I can, like, okay, I'm going out, I can wear these clothes, and I know that I'm not going to feel icky, I'm not going to feel uncomfortable, and I'm not going to just, try to run away from there as soon as I can just so I can get out of my clothes just because I, had the conscious awareness to choose what material I decide to drape myself.
Mm. Eh, And I'm it is that meta awareness, right? It is that meta level. It is not just not just going about your day, but like stepping up one level or out one level, perhaps is better to say. And watching, observing, connecting dots, seeing what happens. And it's I mean, I would say our entire system is constantly communicating with us, with itself, right? And there are aspects of me that are more attuned to one thing or another, and just kind of on the same path, but a slight tangent. Yesterday, I wrote a blog post yesterday called Nudges of Intuition because I was to spend the day playing office at Caspian's place, but we started a bit early because he had another meeting to attend first. And when he called and said, I'm headed home, you can come now. Um, I was reading this book that I need to finish by tomorrow evening because I'm going to give it to somebody else to read. Right. And I was like, I hadn't even come halfway and it wasn't that easy a book to read. So when I was packing up my gear to head to his place, a little thought said, bring the book. And my head said, no, why should you bring the book? You've got all of this computer stuff to work on, and then you will be heading to Lindy Hop class in the evening. So there's why would you bring the book? That doesn't make any sense. It's illogical. It's not rational. So I didn't bring the book. Caspian had said when he called, "Oh, and by the way, I have an electrician working here today. So just so you know that there might be a little bit of noises in the background." And I was like, that's fine. So I come to his place. We start to, check in and talk, and then I get on with doing podcasting work, right? And then the electrician is hollering, saying, "I'll turn off the power now if that's okay." Yeah, yeah, sure, fine. It's like I could use my phone as a hotspot for the Wi-Fi and stuff, so no issues. Getting it done, kind of rounding off the three things that I had on the to do. Noticing, oh, my battery's at 41%. No worries. Looking down, looking up again. Oh, it's at 13%. My computer is getting old. So
Oh,
like, it can turn off at any time when it's below 40. I'm going. And it was 3 o'clock, and I had my Lindy Hop at 20 past 7.
huh.
So I went to the electrician and I asked him, "How long do you think before the power is back on?" "Oh, it won't be long." Okay, I've been around, a handicraft craftsman enough to know that that's not clear enough. So, do you mean 10 minutes, an hour, 3 hours? What do you mean? He said, "Well, half an hour, an hour." Yeah, that's why I should have brought the book, right? That's why I should have brought the book. That's what that little nudge of intuition was telling me. And I had rationalized it away. Um, and it's kind of the same thing of picking up on the signals from my entire system, being aware of it, getting a rash or having a hay fever because you're wearing so much stuff that you've laundered in perfumed laundry detergent, or bringing the book because the little intuitive one went, "Oh, there's an electrician there." You might actually need the book because it's an analog book, right? You don't need a battery, you don't need power to be able to read it. And not connecting the dots, just not doing that. Or like I did yesterday, and I do this quite a lot, but I'm onto it. I let my intellect kind of bully intuition into,
Yeah,
submission. It's like, no, no, no,
yeah,
that's ridiculous. Why would
yeah,
you bring a big fat
right.
book when you're got lots of work to do and then you'll be off? It's like, okay, intuition goes off in a corner, feeling a little bullied.
Yeah.
Um, but it's like I'm on to them. It's like I'm hoping there will be a time when my rational mind, my intellect is like it's on a par with my intuition and with my other senses and aspects of myself. It's like my gut system can tell me, "You really shouldn't eat this food," you know? Whereas my intellect can say, "Oh, but you'd better because you haven't got, there won't be room to do it then and there, or you'll have to throw it away. And that's a waste of research." It's like coming to a place where they kind of all play without a hierarchy,
Mm,
without a set hierarchy, I should say. Because now and
yeah,
again, maybe it is intuition. Okay, it's your turn now. You're the one who knows most about this situation. Maybe one time it is the gut system that says,
yeah.
okay, I'm the one in charge now. Sorry, dude. I don't care about what intuition and intellect says. I'm in charge here, right? But it's not a given hierarchy. It's not always intellect at the top and intuition at the bottom. Um,
And I'm guessing I'm trying to like draw the dots between this in terms of like in my mind, can I have like, different costumes for each of these characters, right? Like both of these superheroes, whether it's the intellect or the intuition or or the instinct, like each one of them, like in a sense, like I love like this one is driving the car right now, the other one's riding shotgun. In this particular situation, intellect drives. And in my mind, I've always used this analogy that intellect drives the car, but intuition decides where we're going, right? So, in a way, so, and if I were to allow intuition to drive the car, then we'd be heading in the right direction, but we probably would go right off the cliff because this guy doesn't know how to drive a stick shift, right? So this it's incredibly amusing and funny. This image that I have between my intuition and intellect, and but I feel like it makes sense in one way because I feel like okay, this guy knows where we're going or has some sort of GPS. Like that's my intuition. He knows where we're going, even if I don't have the intellect to input it into the map, he's going to take me where I want to go, right? And if I would just allow my intuition, my instinct to navigate, I would land up in a nicer place than where I am at right now. And but it also takes the intellect to drive me from this point A to point B. Like just knowing where I need to get to is probably not enough if I don't exercise my intellect enough. And in my mind, I've been trying to, connect these two while you were speaking. Imagine if I were to have these images of two characters in my mind dressed in different outfits, right? And it's almost like I can like if I were to if I had your poncho right now, and if one side had a color and the if I flipped it the other way around, it had another color. And I'm like, okay, now intellect's in the front seat, and so I just flip it. So this is the intellect side of it, and I just flip it around, and I'm like, okay, now, every time I look at myself in the mirror, it's kind of like a reinforcement that, okay, now we know who's in charge, who's doing what. And it seems funny, but I like having some sort of a physical talisman of sorts to kind of remind me, right? Like, what does this mean to me? Like, like right now I'm wearing this chain, and like I feel like this chain is something that just has weight, right? It feels like a lot of people are like, "Whoa, that's so blingy! Like, you look so gangster. That looks ridiculous. That looks so like like you look like a rogue." And like I get a whole bunch of responses, and I take all that feedback. I'm like, okay, so I know what's going through people's minds when they see me this way, but there's a certain amount of weight it brings. It also, like, it reminded me of when you spoke about the tiara. Like, it adds a certain amount of weight on your head, right? And like, we heard the saying, uneasy lies the head that wears the crown, but like, it may have certain weight. It may feel uncomfortable to a certain extent, but it also brings a certain feeling. It evokes a certain sense of, you know, uh, action from me, right? Like the moment I wear this, and I feel like this is probably 120 grams. It's quite heavy for a pendant, and it just feels like the weight of responsibility, right? And it's not something that I want to get rid of. It's something that reminds me that as unhinged and as free as I want to live, like this wild beast who has, never been leashed. Like, there's this image that I have in my head, like, you can't catch me. No one's ever going to tie me down. So there's this crazy image that I have of this, this wild, wild beast running amok. And I feel like this is like a leash around my neck that I've thrown on myself, right? Because there has to be something. While there are times when you want to drop anchor and just sail away, right? When you want to raise anchor and sail away, and there'll be times when you want to drop anchor and just stay put and just experience the waves around you and not have to go any place and any time. And I feel like that's something like all of these physical attributes kind of like remind us of certain things, even if it's not a very conscious thing, because sometimes we can make conscious decisions because we are the intellect is in the driver's seat and is making those conscious decisions, and other times the intuition or instinct is in the driver's seat and we're not really focusing on what we're conscious of at the moment. And during those times, these sort of things have a greater emphasis, right? Because they're just subliminally working to remind us of certain things, like me wearing a ring or wearing a certain kind of dress or certain kind of accessory reminds me, even if I'm not particularly conscious of
Yeah, and for some reason, the word constraint comes to mind. And I remember um, 10 years ago, I took a course with a woman who has a lot of healer in her. She's a wise old lady, a medicine woman. And she draws a lot of mandalas, and she's an artist too. But so she had in this course, it was a coaching course, but one of the things we were to do was to draw a mandala. And I remember her explanation of this to be this like perfect illustration of what I hear you saying right now. Because she says, you have the ring, a mandala, you're supposed to be within the confines of the ring, right? Except, she said, when you're not, right? So you start off with this ring, a white sheet of paper with a ring on it. You're supposed, with bunny ear, to be on the inside, but there can be a time when you are called to go outside of that ring. But when you do, you're very conscious of it. You cannot just oops, right?
Yeah.
Here's the ring. I'm inside this ring. This is the boundaries. This is the constraint. And now, oh, I need to push outside of them. Um, and I thought that was a beautiful way to put it. And I think it's a beautiful way to look at most things, most constraints that we have in life. It's like they're there for a reason. They
Yeah.
are there at the heart, at the root of them. I believe they're there to serve us. And now and again, it won't. And then you have to step outside and say, okay, no, right? Um,
It's beautiful. So, in a way, like it starts by confining my exploration, and the end boundary of where I can go then becomes the origin point of the rest of my life or the rest of the
yes.
adventure,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's the starting point of this next, right? Because you can imagine it as to be this mandala, and then when you go outside, okay, a new mandala outside, that one pops up. You fill that one up. You go outside, okay, next one. So, yeah, um, again, psychological development stages, right? It's
Mhm.
like we do
Mhm.
take steps. We um, do things in some type of order. And you can look at the Fibonacci pattern, the
Yep.
golden circle. It's like it's
Yep.
the same. You have the starting point, and then there's a next, and then there's a next. And before you know it, you have this gorgeous looking concha shell, right? Um, that will never end, right? There's no, okay, here's the end point of this. You can't go further. It's like, no, actually, that doesn't happen because you can always cross that border, cross that border, cross that border, and just continue. Uh,
It feels interesting, like, when I'm constantly coming back to the whole idea of what we wear. And it's interesting that, you've chosen a poncho, right? Like it's almost like it's like I've been thinking about how across, India, everyone just wears a piece of cloth. Like if you go back in time, like a sari is a piece of cloth, a dhoti is a piece of cloth, a lungi is a piece of cloth, like a towel is a piece of cloth, a turban is a piece of cloth. Everything is just a single piece of cloth, right? You can just drape it 100 different ways, but they're essentially just a piece of cloth. And a piece of cloth can be limited. It can be a little hanky. It can be, a 9 yard sari. It can just go on and on. And this reminded me, right? And when you spoke about the infinite loop of the conch shell, and, just like everything can just keep on flowing. And it's interesting that if I were to use some sort of a a cloth to drape around myself, which can change function and according to the situation, right? Like I could just wrap it around my own waist. I could just wrap it around myself if I'm feeling cold. I could wrap it around my head if I want some sort of protection over my head. Like there's so many ways in which a single accessory can be used in our systems, right? In our lives and in the way we live. And I'm so curious to wonder, like, how in the modern situation, like, what are these simple tools which have multifunctional capabilities in our lives, right? And right now, all I can think of is my phone. Like, if I think of the phone, it's like, it can be, I can write notes in it, I can take photographs, I can like use it to navigate my life. And it's so interesting that what can I like now I'm tripping on this idea that what can I use in my life that becomes multifunctional apart from a digital accessory. What can I design, like what can I create, what can I use that I could change, which could just morph into something depending on my mood, depending on the environment, depending on what I'd like at that point of time, depending on what I need at that point of time. And like that connects so clearly with, like, imagine if we had one single outfit which you could wear as a dress suit, which is like a business thing if you had to go to that kind of an environment, or if you're suddenly on your way out and then it suddenly gets windy and you could wrap it around as a shawl. Like, I'm so stoked with the idea of like, figuring out what we can use today that caters to the intellect's requirements to be a part of this society that we belong to. And at the same time, satisfy the intuition's demands to cater to my own sense of well being and wanting to just do what I want to do rather than what I need to do to be a part of the larger whole.
And it's so interesting. Like I have next to me here, this is a green shawl, a big green shawl that I bought. It's wool. I bought it in Florence. Ooh, 2006, 7. Yeah, somewhere around there. And before the poncho, that was the shawl, right? And I still use it a lot. And it's been just like you say, it just reminds me of the versatility of this shawl. This has been my at the top of the list whenever I have gone traveling or whenever the family has gone traveling, because I know it can warm me, it can warm the kids, it can serve as a blanket, you can sit on it, it can serve as a comforter, you can have it on top of you, it can serve as a pillow if you need it. So the kids a bit, where's the shawl, right? It's like so they have grown up knowing that this piece of whatever they need has been there. Right? And it's wool, so if it's raining outside, I'll drape it around my head and it'll keep me dry. And just enormous versatility. So, yes, thank you for kind of making me notice and appreciate how extremely functional this is. And it's just, like you say, it's just a piece of fabric, you know? And then I'm thinking, because I think the other end of this is like the Swiss knife, the Swiss Army
Mm.
knife. But it's that one is consists of a number of single function tools put together to be a multifunction tool,
Yeah.
right? So it's not one piece of, it is many small pieces put together. Um, so it's kind of the same, but really not the same because it's just like, let's put all of these 10 tools together into one tiny one. But with, because you can open the scissor and you can open the pliers and you can open the knife and the screwdriver and whatever, right? But what is there? And it reminds me, one of the things that is so interesting I find about things is I'm holding a cup and the usability, the function of the cup is not the cup, it's the void inside the cup, right? Same with the
Yeah.
house. The usability, the function of the house is not the walls and the roof and the floor. It's the space in between. It's the void that they protect, in a sense, that they make up.
Yeah.
So if you look around you, there's a shitload of things where it's the absence that's held, that's the usable. A basket, a bowl, a pot on the stove, the fridge, the washing machine, the dishwasher, um, the pot that the plant is in. It's the void.
And that's it's incredibly beautiful to remember that, right? Because it just feels like that is we focus so much on the house that we're building, the land that we're inhabiting, that we forget about the space that we're surrounding, right? And that is where the magic lies. Like if you think of everything that is known in the universe, like we treasure knowledge so much, like, oh, I know this, I know that, I'm going to know this, I'm going to learn that. And like, let's exchange notes. And like, now have more knowledge than you. And like, there's this constant obsession with collecting knowledge. And same time, like what makes knowledge so desirable is the fact that it's a big question mark, right? Like, and the moment you have all the answers, it's no longer fun to know things, right? Because then you just grow into this old cynical individual who's like, oh yeah, I know the answer to that. Oh, I know the answer to this. Oh, I know the answer to that. But the magic and the curiosity of chasing knowledge is in the eyes of the kid who's like constantly, oh, how does that happen? Oh, how did this happen? Oh, why is that called this? And why is this look like that? Why does this feel like this? Like everything is a question mark. And that's exactly the void, right? Like the
Yes.
question mark and the void is one and the same.
Yep. Yep. Precisely. Oh, that always gives me chills.
Yeah. That's the excitement. That is exactly that excitement, the chills, right? Like, how can you like that feeling? That just reminds us that we're alive, that we're still excitable, that we're still curious, and that we're still childlike in our desire to know, to grow, to learn, to explore. And the moment those chills are gone, it's like, oh, yeah,
And I have gotten better at noticing and picking up chills and knowing that this means something. There's pay attention here. You're onto something. It's like either there's something to listen to, there's something to say, there's something to do or to be. It's like it is for me a clear signal that pay attention, my friend. There's something of value here. Oh, and I can, it's like I can get that same feeling when I start to cry because there's something of such beauty, or it's like it's that same. Pay attention here. There's something here.
it's almost like it's a whisper. Right? It's like this whisper. You feel those chills. It's almost like the intuition or gut or something is whispering something in my ears, in my body rather, right? Like it's not in my ears, but it's inside of me, and I like I just like just say, oh, someone just whispered something, and then that's because it's almost like the louder the voice inside of me shouts, the more resistant I am to listen to it, right? But when it whispers, I'm drawn towards it. It's rather than me trying to avoid it and evade it and run away from it. It's like the moment it whispers, I'm like, wait, what do you say? And now my attention, my awareness is drawn closer towards that whisper.
And you know, your body does this all the time. Like when the hairs on your body stand up, pay attention. You know, there's something there. When you get goosebumps or god bumps, like I call them, you know, pay attention. There's something here that you know that calls out for you for a reason. It is it is a signal, and it's like listen to it, note it. It's like if you're hesitant. Okay, what am I hesitant? What is, again, what's my system telling me? There's some part of my system, there's some part of the superhero, squad that I have within me that is right now flapping its cape saying, hey, pay attention, right? And kind of becoming more and more conscious about that. Maybe I can also then pick up, oh, this is the flapping of the cape of intuition. This is what that feels like. This is the cape of the gut system when the gut system says, don't eat this. Please, you'll be sick, right? Um, it's like the little nuances in what's the message and how is this message conveyed? I really like the superheroes. I have had the image of the orchestra. Right? It's like
Hmm.
the first violin and here's the bass and over there is the little triangle, whatever you call that in English. And it's like all of them, there's the clarinet and there's the oboe and all of these different and they have very particular a particular register. Their tone is specific. A clarinet is something completely different than a flute. It just completely different sound, right? Um, but so picking up on it, but the superhero squad, it it's not bad. It's not bad at all. And you can kind of have fun with it too, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the fact that, like the moment it's also very empowering, right? Because the moment I have this perception of a superhero in my head, it's just like nothing feels impossible. Because I have a bunch of superheroes on my side. Like, what can life throw at me that we can't tackle? Right. And even if it's something like completely out of my league, hey, we're superheroes. We rise to the challenge, right? Like if the moment I have the word super in my head, I'm already feeling invincible, invulnerable, or even infinitely capable, right? Like, because invulnerable means I can't be destroyed, but here the idea is I can be destroyed, but you know, I, I don't care how bad the situation gets. I'm a superhero. We're superheroes. We're like, the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. We're like the Avengers. And like, we have this whole, we're going to like, okay, if I can't do it, then we're going to do it together. And I call in, another superhero. And then, like, so I'm like, okay, intellect can't handle this. Let's call in intuition. Let's call in, like we bring in the whole gang. And then all of us are all excited. Okay, like this is like, so here's the problem, here's the situation, how are we going to solve it? And then everyone has like this little brainstorming session, and someone says, oh, you're going to do it like this, or we're going to do it like this, we're going to do that. And this just feels like fun, right? Like what a moment ago was like a situation where I felt distraught, like this was crisis, this was disaster. Now has suddenly become an exciting game, a challenge, an experience to engage and interact. And that's one of the things. That's why I like this whole framing of superheroes, because it just feels like there's so much fun. There's so many characters involved. There's like costumes. There's adventures. There's infinitely, uh, anything. I could fly. I could have like beams flying out of my skin. eyes, like I could, telepathy. Like there's so many things that all I need to do is just imagine that power, and I can concoct or create a character who has those powers and say, okay, if I had telepathy, how would I deal with the situation? If I could fly, how would I deal with the situation? I feel like, yeah, you're right. It just brings this whole playful lens to problem solving rather than think of it as something, okay, we have to get serious now because it's a matter of life and death. And
And going one step further and realizing that I'm a superhero and I have superheroes in me. But you're a superhero. You have superheroes in me. What about my friend Dominic? And we bring in Caspian, So you can kind of play with it with with other people too. It's like, okay, let's gather this, gang of superheroes times, the amount of superheroes we have within so that we are also relating with each other to touch on the first episode, right? That we're also inviting into the relating other people's, what will your intuition superhero bring that will help my intuition superhero?
yeah.
Um, and just kind of again, and imagine going to a brainstorming session. It's like, okay, we have this problem to solve. If you look at all of your colleagues and coworkers as superheroes, right? Man, what's possible? Well, nothing isn't possible, right? It's like
Yeah,
everything will be possible then. Um, Rather than, oh no, I'm stuck with him again.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
sorry, dude, you won't really make any breakthroughs from that energy. I know that. It's like it won't happen, right?
yeah. And I also feel like it would be so helpful to overcome the shame that I might feel for certain aspects of myself, right? Like when I see the superhero in you, one of your superheroes, the same character is essentially the idiot in my in my crew, and like we're constantly looking down on him and saying, like, you never come up with any good ideas, you're an idiot, you don't have any, you're no good, you're just hanging on, like, all right, it's all right, we let you ride with us, but you're just a pain in the ass, right? And then now suddenly we come to this brainstorming session where you're superheroes, one of them is this exact same character, but in your crew this guy is rocking, right? And now that leaves me thinking, oh, wow, this guy just solved that entire thing. So maybe this guy that we look at as an idiot really has something to contribute, right? And now he suddenly gets reinstated as the superhero with his own unique superpower rather than being the idiot who's just like, doesn't have any powers at all.
Yeah. With God bumps again. I was I've just discovered Lost in Space on Netflix. So I've been watching Lost in Space and I've been stitching sashiko patterns that it's been so much fun to do this. But it's the Robinson family. And everybody is like these apparent superheroes, right? You have the dad who's the Navy SEAL. There's nothing he can't do. Fastest reflexes, strongest, whatever. There's the mother who's like the super genius astrophysicist, space engineer, whatever. There's the youngest brother who's the geologist, super whiz nerd, and empath, right?
Mm,
There's the oldest sister who's the medical doctor who's just gets it together and, is always, she's gorgeous and she's smart and, all of that. And then there's the middle sister who's the idiot
Ah,
with bunny ears in your crew, right? Because she's
yeah,
the one
yeah.
who's she's not particularly smart that you can see. She's not the fit physical. She's not the geologist. She's the writer, right? So
Mm.
she writes, but she's been like this constant. You can feel it. I'm in the second season now. You can feel it throughout that she is put in this position and puts herself in this position of not being as good as the others because she's not this and she's not that and she doesn't have that thing and and she constantly belittles herself. And then yesterday I was watching an episode where, ta-da! Superhero middle sister is the one who saves the day, right? And you can kind of see in her entire demeanor that, oh, I do have value. You know, I'm not what my father is. I'm not what my mother is. I'm not what my older sister is. I'm not what my younger brother is. I bring me. And shit, there's value there, you know? So it is kind of stepping into the agency of what you are. It's like, so it's a self empowerment of sorts, which I think what empowerment has to be. I'm the only one who can, I can't give you empowerment.
Yep,
I can hold space for it, but you're the one who has to step into it, put on that cape and say,
yep,
ready to rock and roll.
yep,
Um, and she
yep.
did that perfectly in the episode yesterday. And it is just this thing of her no longer being relegated into the corner, into the back seat. It's like, well, if you stay over there, you won't be a nuisance to the rest of us, right? Giving the menial tasks so that everybody feels they have something to do, but she's the one that has to sweep the floor. It's like, what the fuck? Somebody else is designing this super engine, right? I'm sweeping the floor. Um,
That is that it's interesting, right? Because the idea of power is like the very nature of power is not something that can be shared in the sense like you cannot give power to someone even if you want to, right? Like you can share skills, you can teach how to use that and leverage it and utilize that power, but you can't really give power. At the end of the day, it's in its very nature, it's something that needs to be seized. Like you seize the moment, you seize the day, you seize power, and in the seizing lies the power. Like there's no real power in power, right? It's just the fact that you realize, I realize that I can do this, right? And that this is unimportant. What I can do is completely irrelevant to the belief that I can do it, right? And that is essentially what I'm seizing. I can take control of. I can take control of my perception that I can do something, right? It could be as simple as just flipping a coin. It could be something as painting the wall. It could be like, changing the world. It could be building a spaceship that takes us to Mars. Like it really doesn't matter, but the belief that I can do something, that I can get something done, I can, is something that nobody can give us, right? Because at the end of the day, you never see a superhero origin story where he or she is handed something down. There's always the standard hero's journey where there's struggle, there's strife, and there's trauma, there's crisis, and all of that. And the individual eventually has to step up and sees that power for himself, right? That power to exercise agency, to make that decision, right? Like power doesn't have to be something that stifles someone else. It could just be the power to transform oneself, and it could be the power to not allow myself to stifle myself, right? In this case, that's exactly what I'm doing. Like I'm the one who decided that one part of me is the idiot, right? So the idiot part now decides that I'm not taking this anymore. I'm not the idiot, right? And even if I am the idiot, The idiot has a lot of, value to provide. Like if you go back in any
Yep. The
court,
fool.
right? Yeah, fool. Yes, the court jester, the fool. Like after the king, after the philosopher, the most powerful individual in that court was the jester, was the clown, was the fool. Not even the prime minister, not the entire court of ministers. It was the fool, right? And so yeah, here's to idiots everywhere.
Everywhere, unite. Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting to hear you speak about this because one of the things that I'm gotten this from Steve Chandler, who's a coach in the US, where he says, um, believe or believe or do. He doesn't use those words. I don't know what the words are in English really, but tro eller testa, I say in Swedish. So I can believe I can do something. And a lot of people get stuck there. As I don't believe I can write a book, sing a guitar, play the guitar, write a song, run a marathon, find a husband, be a good mom, make a good meal. It's like any number of things you can be in a position where I don't believe I can do this. And you stop there. What he says is, forget about that. You don't have to believe you could start a company. You just do it. Right? So he
Yeah,
says, do it. Right? Because then you'll know. You'll know. Can I play the guitar? Can I make a meal? Can I find a husband? Can I write a book? It's like you'll find out if you can or not. You don't have to go via I have to believe I can do it, which I have found to be an extremely helpful piece of tankespjan that I've been able to provide to a lot of coach clients of mine, where, oh, I couldn't do that. I don't have that in me. I could, oh, no, never. You could do that. I couldn't. It's like, I don't give a fuck what you think you can or can't. You do it.
do it.
Right. Which is kind of a way to, in a sense, it is actually taking steps along the hero's journey rather than standing at the starting point going, no point. I won't ever. I might just as well not. I'll just settle down here. I'll build my house here, you know, instead of actually, there's one step and then there's one and then a third one and then you do the fourth and along you go. So the belief and it's a tricky one because, man, there's a lot of memes out there pushing for you have to believe in yourself, right?
Yeah,
You believe in you, you can do it, this and that. And I'm going, you don't have to believe in yourself at all.
yeah,
Just do it, right?
yeah,
Because then you will know that that belief that you can do it is valid, right?
yeah, yeah.
Then you get to, you know, first time I play the guitar in front of people, right? Second time, little bit less. Third time, little bit less. He's like, okay, sky doesn't fall down. I don't die. Nobody throws eggs at me yet. It's like, so the, I don't, you know, I don't have to believe I can do it in order to do it. So
To do.
when I do it, I then have the belief from a knowing that I can do it. Right. And
Yeah.
and that's kind of agency, isn't it?
Yes, exactly right. Like when you believe, that can lead to action, or you can start from action, and the more you act, the more you start believing in yourself, right? And even there, I can believe in myself to execute that action, or I can believe in the process that leads to that particular outcome, right? And I don't need to believe in myself. Like you said, I can believe in the process that, okay, you're telling me that if I do this, this is going to happen. All right, I'm going to give it a try. You're telling me that even if I do this, I may not be able to make things happen, but I would still feel happy for having tried it. Okay, cool. I'll give it a try. Right. Like, and this is where I feel like play just fits in magically because there is, you're not really sure of the process, you're not really sure of yourself. Neither are you sure of the outcome, right? Like everything is uncertain here. I can't believe in myself because I've never done it before. I can't believe in the process because I don't even know the game. I'm just, I am trying to make it up as I go along. And I don't even believe in the outcome because I have no idea what it is. I mean, I'm just playing the fool, right? And this is, I feel like that space where when I get tired of believing myself, I can just play. When get tired of believing in the process, I can just play. When I'm tired of constantly, believing in a certain result coming
And
true or coming to
working for an
life,
outcome. Mm.
yes, right? I can
Mm.
just drop that. And I feel like this is like this play brings us back to that void. It's that space of emptiness.
Same thought, same thought.
Yeah, so it's like it's so important to build that house. It's so important to, stake that land. It's important to do all of that. And at the same time, it's so vital to realize that all of that then can just disappear. One typhoon can blow away everything that I've built, my mental models, like one disease, one disaster, one medical crisis, one economic crisis can break away all our physical assets, our mental models, right? One storm, a perfect mental storm, can break me down from like what happened to Jordan Peterson, right? Like from top of his game, he was suddenly a complete wreck. Well, he's come back now, but for practically a year or so, he had completely disappeared. No one even knew where he had gone. So, like, a perfect storm can take anyone, the strongest individual, by surprise. And I feel like if the more we play, the more we get comfortable with being in that space of emptiness, that void, that uncertainty, that chaos.
And I'm thinking this is so interesting because I absolutely agree with you. And I have this sense that when you step into that play, a lot of the beliefs you have about what is important and vital and necessary and such can just fall away because really you don't need them. You have a belief you do, but that is holding you back. And so that reminds me of the Stoics, which say the precisely same thing, but from a position, a place, a come from that for me at least is opposite from the place that you come from. You come from
Yeah.
this playful energy of whoops, let's step into the void and who knows what might happen. Whereas they're kind of pointing to the same thing, but coming to it from this more rigid, stern, um, which is my perception of it. It might not at all be that, but that's the way I sense it. It's like this. You need to, step away from all of your belongings for a week and live on the street so that you know what will happen when that perfect storm comes, right? So it's like, um, in essence, pointing to the same thing and lauding the same thing, but completely different energies
Yeah.
going into it, which I think is good because again, for some people, this play energy is making them break out in hives, right? It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
no, that won't do for me. I just, my entire body just says no. Whereas the stoic way of doing it, oh, yeah, I can do that, right? And other people will go completely vice versa. It's like, don't you bring me any stoic energy here. It's like, no, I'm allergic to them. Give me some playtime. Yes, I'm on, right? So it's fun how there are so many ways in, right? And you can, again, for me, it's playing to try to, sample them, try them on then, do and see.
Yep.
Does it work? Doesn't it work? Then you'll know. It's like, okay, I have 5 ways into this thing, or no, play is the one. That's the only one where I feel comfortable. It's like, okay, but maybe you can play with the stoic just a little bit and see what happens, right? Again, being in this amoebic, amorphous, um, you know, v- away from the rigid, away from the, it has to be this way. Because again, then you're setting up beliefs for you that may shatter and fall away. Like you say, the perfect mental storm. What then? Right? How can I be in a way that I can be in the structure, but I know when that structure falls, because they do fall, I'm strong enough to manage anyway. I can live without it or with it. That is strength. That is
Yes.
power.
And I feel like, what you mentioned coming from both the sides, it's almost like the bell curve meme, right? It's like you could be at this end, you could be at the other end, and it's the same. It's only when you come to the center when all hell breaks loose. And it's like if you look at it, like if you think of the Spartans, right? The Spartans were like these, like the average individual's perception of a Spartan, like the very word Spartan denotes denial, right? Like you're living on bare minimum, you don't have this, you don't have that, you're gonna struggle, you're gonna strive. But if you look at the way they lived their lives, they were like constantly playing. Like for them, the whole idea of life and death was a game. The idea of living by themselves was a game. The idea of you know engaging with each other, like living with the same gender was a game, living with with the opposite gender was a game. Like everything was playful. Like even if you look at the movie 300, like the way they've been denoted, they're like a bunch of kids. Like the 300 of them, just 300 of them, they're like 3 million people around them, like trying to kill them. And they're laughing, they're cracking jokes with each other, they're making out, they're making fun of each other, they're like trying to, there's so much, it seems like a bunch of kids having fun at a night out, right? It just seems so playful, so alive, so engaging. Like it's their last few moments alive, and they're just like, ha ha ha. And they're still like, it just feels like there's at the end, like even if you look at the education spectrum, right? Like kindergarten is playful, there's no structure, there's no rules, there's no curriculum, there's nothing to learn, there's no homework at the end of the day. You don't really have to learn this by this amount of time. There's no defining structure. And as you progress through the education system, there's more and more confines. You have to know this, you have to learn this, this is the outcome. You better put in your assignments, you better know this, you got to finish your projects. And then eventually you come to the other extreme of the spectrum where you're now doing your doctorate program. You pick what the hell you want to study, you pick whom you want to learn it from. You don't have a curriculum, you decide what you're going everything is open ended all over again, right? And I feel like so, like you could just throw play into anything. Like if I want to learn knitting, how can I play with it? Maybe I'll just the two of us would be like playing on guard, like touche, like we're just playing with those knitting needles as if they were like silly swords, right? And then we start playing around with different fabrics, and you say, okay, no matter what, these two shouldn't mix together. And then I purposely start mixing them together to see what happens, right? And then I wreck the whole thing, and you're like, "See, I told you so," right? And it everything can be like I just feel like it's like a lubricant, right? We can just sprinkle and infuse play into everything. Like you want to learn Stoic philosophy, you want to learn. So I could just make it playful by dressing up in a toga every time I come in for our Stoic philosophy session. And everyone's like, what the fuck is this dude doing on a Zoom call in a toga? I'm like, what? I thought this was the Stoic class, so I dressed up like one. Right? So I just feel like it's one of those things that, regardless of what we do and how we do it, like it's just one of the things you just sprinkle. It's just like one seasoning of sorts, right? You just sprinkle it anything to make the food taste a little better, or
Better.
not even better in terms of quality, but just probably more enticing to the eye, to the palate, to just say, Oh, that's an interesting twist. What's that? Oh, I just added a sprinkle of, cinnamon. Ah, right. I feel like plays like that's one of those things that isn't really there in the equation, but is like a catalyst. It's not really necessary for that to happen, but if you sprinkle that, like it just makes everything feel so much more magical.
So, two things. One, do you know that in Sweden, kindergarten today actually does have, or preschool does have a curriculum?
Oh
It has
no!
got a structure, it has gotten things you need, should do. And
Uh
I just
oh.
go, ah, I can, again, I can see where it comes from. I can see I can see the reason why people want to have that. And ugh, so that's one thing. But I'm gonna read you um a quote that has popped up twice in my life in the past week. Chinese philosopher Zhuangzi on how to approach life. To the most trivial actions, attach the devotion and mindfulness of 100 monks. To matters of life and death, attach a sense of humor, which is fun for me because what I'm connecting here is, when I'm doing the dishes or sweeping the floor or sitting and doing my knitting or making this embroidery, like be with it. Like be with this thing. Cause that's how I will pick up on potential good bumps or hair standing on, or how does this material feel against my skin when I touch it? It's like it will bring that awareness, that the opening of the senses. I will be open to the senses in a way. And then in a situation of life and death, bring a sense of humor. It is just like what you were saying about the 300. It's like, okay, everybody's trying to kill them. How can we play with this? You know, because that is how you get the movement that you will need in order to survive, right? That is what, if you're strict, stern, firm, rigid, sorry, dude, it won't work. You will get toppled over or run down, right? But you need the movement. You need that play. Um,
Yeah.
and it's interesting with play because I've I know I talked to Frank about this in the first season. It's like in some ways play can be so easy for me, but play in the way that I have viewed what play is, it's like, you have to play make believe with your kids. And I am the queen, of course, because I'm wearing the tiara and this and that. And it's like, so, and the thing is, that's uncomfortable. I haven't played a lot with my kids that way, right? I've had fun in other ways with it. But I realized that when I was a kid, we were playing Dallas and I was Pam and we were playing fire department. I could be a fire dog. And just because there wasn't any right way, right? But role playing in, leadership training, now you will get to be the salesperson. Oh man, I hate it because I immediately step into this. I need to be this way for this to be right. And then I'm actually not playing, right? So that's interesting how I can shy away from play when it's play that I think I have to do in a certain way, which in essence is not play. So I was like, okay, I'm stuck. This is a catch 22 here, right? It's like, okay, but I can play when I'm just, I made this poncho without a pattern. I just figured it out. That's a type of play. I love that type of play, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love the way that you hit on that word, have to play. When you have to play, it's no longer play, it's work, right? It's work. Like I can need to do something because that's the base layer, right? Like that's Maslow's base layer of survival, right? Like I
Mm.
need these things in place. Like I can't say I just want to play if I don't have food, if I don't have shelter, and if I don't have basic necessities for my survival, right? So needing to do something, like if I'm really, I may be able to infuse skill in it, play in it, but I may not be able to do it, right? But that's a layer that just needs to be done. So the keyword here is need. And then have to becomes the next layer. So it's like have becomes like work. I'm not gonna starve if I don't go to work, but I won't have the things that I want, right? And that's where play comes in. It's like, I want to play. I want to do this. I want to, explore that. I want to make this without a blueprint. I want to, tear up that blueprint and try something of my own, right? Like there's this constant exploration. I want to destroy everything that I've built so far so that I can try something new, right? And it's important to, like, draw, like like last time we spoke about those ratios of good, bad, ugly, right? Like it's like, I mean, when I start off, maybe I'm not good enough to play more than just 2% of the time. Like maybe I can just sprinkle like 2% of my life, I can infuse it with play. Maybe as I get a little more comfortable, I can take it up to a 20%. And at some point of time, 80% of my life will start to feel like play, right? I
Mm.
could be working because it's work. I could still be finding play in that. I could be doing this for my survival, where I'm like
Mm.
literally like, dragging, heaps of, just like a menial laborer, like, like, oh my God, I'm a daily wage laborer. I'm just like getting a pittance, but I may be pretending that I'm Sisyphus carrying the rock up the mountain. Like in my head, I'm role playing the situation, even in a situation where I'm starving, I'm toiling, I'm struggling. There's all strife and pain in my life. And even in that moment, if I can like infuse play into this and say, you know what, I'm not a laborer who's struggling. I'm Hercules who's doing this because it's one of those tasks, and at the top of the mountain isn't a truck that's I'm going to drop this into, but is this gorgeous maiden who's waiting for me. Like, it could just be like, this is where that game of role play, right? Like that perception and reality and perception is like a sense of agency. I may still need to do this to survive, to feed myself and family, etc. But I still have the agency to say, I'm in fucking charge. I'm going to visualize this. I'm going to imagine this the way I like to, just so that I can find place, so I can find joy, peace, comfort, even in this worst of situations. And I think, like Viktor Frankl, like this is what he did, right? Like if you look at it, what was he doing? I mean, like there wasn't an ounce of self pity, even in the worst of conditions for a human, right? He seemed so empowered, he seemed so comfortable, so in control. Like when you read the book, you're reading his account of his life. It's terrible, it's macabre, but you're left feeling, wow. You're not left feeling like shit, right? You're left feeling more empowered, more, you're rooting for the guy. You feel like, wow, if this guy could do it, like my situation isn't so bad at all, right? It's empowering, and I feel like if you can eventually take it to that level. Like we feel like play is frivolous, but I feel like it can actually do something, like transform the worst of situations. into the best of experiences just because I feel like I am in control of what I feel from the situation. You could be torturing me right now, but I'm going to feel in control. And if you look at it, we think of it as insane, but when you see characters like the Joker, people who are just laughing in the face of crisis and pain and misery, and like even psychologically, you can diagnose that, okay, this is just a defense mechanism where you're using humor as a defense mechanism. That is definitely one way, but you could also use that humor to infuse a certain, use it as a painkiller, right? And you can use it as a painkiller. You can use play as a lubricant for the friction in your life. You can use it as a painkiller when you need it. And yeah, maybe, and that's where wisdom comes in, right? Like at some point, you don't no longer need it. Why would you still carry it? And that's, that can move into PTSD where you have like, you've used a certain kind of a cope for a certain kind of a situation, but unfortunately, you can't let go of that cope even when you're no longer in that situation. Now you're stuck, right? And that brings us back to what defined as being free flowing and not getting stuck, not getting rigid in what was once a cope, what was once the game you figured out so you could explore that better, you could get out of that easier, but now you're stuck playing that game in a loop, even though you don't want to, which comes back to, do I want to play or do I not want to play?
Yeah. Which is it is so interesting to hear you say this because it is just that. The insight in me is the the role, the um encouragement I've gotten my entire life to be the good girl, duktig flicka in Swedish, very, which for me centers on meeting others' expectations, right? So when a role play situation comes along from the outside, I'm actually stuck in between a rock and a hard place because it's like if I'm not clear what those expectations are, ah, this is really not something I want to do. It's like I get stuck in the fear of will I get it wrong, right? Because I know there's a wrong, right somewhere and they'll be judging me for it, et cetera, right? But looking at it now, it's like it is a good thing when I come up against those situations because then it's like, okay, that's an identifier, you know? It's like that's a help for me. Ah, here I have a belief. I have to be a certain way. I have a rigid way of being in the situation that stops the flow, stops the movement, stops me from just being. So it's like, what can I do? If I've identified it, I can use a little crowbar and open it and crack it open and see what happens, right? So it's like being aware of it is such a good key, crucial like step because that is how I can get out of it. And now and again, maybe I cannot be aware of it, which I think is what happens to a lot of people who have severe PTSD. It's like they don't know that they are stuck. They don't know that they have shut down their body. They have no idea what it's supposed to feel like. A therapist can help them, a somatic therapist can help them, theater can help them. It's like these things can be of assistance if I don't. But when I have that ability within me, it's like, okay, again, I have agency then. I am. And I haven't had any trauma that severe, at least not that I know of. Doesn't feel
Hmm.
like it. Right. So I do have this ability to use the crowbar from the inside to open
Yeah.
this vault that I have together with others kind of locked myself in. It's like, it's not comfortable anymore. I want to get out of here. I need more room. I need to step out of that mandala circle,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes. And like this ties right back to the whole belief and action thing, right? Like if I'm capable of like choosing what I want to believe in, whether I want to believe in the process, whether I want to believe in myself, I can choose to exercise that agency and just do it. And if I don't find myself in a state where I can exercise that agency, I just do it. Like you said, hey, Helena asked me to do this, so I'm just going to do it. Right? Like, I don't know. I can't decide for myself. I can't think for myself and I can't act for myself.
Mm,
But you're asking me to do this. All right, I'm going to do it.
mm,
Right? And that the you could be someone I trust, a therapist, like all the people that you mentioned. It could be systems, it could be processes, right? I like it's always we prefer to trust individuals over institutions, though like kids are being trained for the opposite these days, right? Like most kids grow up trusting in institutions, which are inanimate organizations, over live animate individuals. But I feel like deep down inside, it's always easier to trust an individual, someone I can make some sort of connection with, right? And that's when the idea of suspending belief, right? Like I believe in this, I don't believe in that. None of that matters anymore. I'm just going to take the leap, which reminds me of how, like eagles. I don't know if this is true, but they drop their young, they kick them off the nest, and this, like they just like fall down, and they're suddenly like, oh my god, I better flap, right? Like, and if they flap, well, good, they survive and they fly, and they have their first flight. If they don't, they're gonna have probably, they may not make it.
Short life.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
what a way to die. Just think about it. Wow, like, that was a trip. Oh, okay. Where am I now? I'm back in heaven. All right, never mind.
yeah, yeah. Okay, next round, next round.
Next try. And let's play again, right? Just think of it.
Yeah,
Oh, damn, game over. Play again? Hell
yeah,
yeah, let's do this.
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's it also inspires resilience towards a situation. Like I may have invested everything into what I believed or into the action I put, and the outcome might have been disastrous, right? For whatever, for may have been my lacking, or may have
Mm,
been just happened circumstance. But either way is my ability to bounce back from that and say, all right, let's try again, right? That's another space that I feel like just infusing that playful spirit. Because, like, if you think of it as, okay, you tried your best, shit happened, things didn't go the way you wanted it. And not only did you not win, but you have lost terribly, right? And you started from X, instead of getting to Y, you have now fallen to minus X. And you're like, oh my God, like, right? You can't. And I feel like this is where, again, if you just sprinkle a little bit of play and say, oh, it's just a game, you lost, try again, right? And it might seem cold, it might seem callous, it might seem like, aren't you even going to give me time to mourn my loss? Aren't you going to give me a shoulder to cry on? And yeah, like that, those are our standard copes that we do have. But imagine if you could think of this as a game you tried, and you're a little kid, you tried to go down the slide and you fell on your face. How much time as a little 5-year-old me would I spend crying there, waiting to be cajoled, to be, you know, someone telling me it's okay, things are going to be all right, you can try this again? And how much time would I spend in that situation of, feeling distraught, feeling hurt, feeling in pain, feeling pity for myself? And how long would it take for me to just get the fuck back up, walk up the slide again and say, okay, I'm feeling scared, especially since I fell the last time. But damn, this is exciting as well. Can't wait to try it again, right? And I feel like that level of capability to play, even when the chips are down, even when the odds are against us. It's something that's very rare, of course, but I feel it's only rare because we stop playing. The more we build this habit of just jumping back into the fray, jumping back into the playground, jumping back into the game, the more likely we are to have that ability to bounce back even from the worst of situations.
And I don't I'm not too particularly fond of Russell Brand, but he has Under the Skin, his podcast, he has an episode with Gabo Mate that
Mhm,
is
mhm.
stellar. It is absolutely amazing. Gabo Mate is wow. They speak about he Gabo Mate helps Russell kind of see that when a parent comforts a child, it's okay. It doesn't hurt that bad. You can do it. Or, it's like, let me blow on that wound and it'll be fine. It's like, it is understandable, but it comes from the parents' inability to be with
Insecure.
their own pain.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I am not able to be with the pain of seeing my kid hurt for whatever reason, be it physical or mental or emotional, or, so that I need to get you out of your situation so that I no longer have to deal with being in my situation. And Russell Brand just has this light bulb moment going, oh, fuck. It's like, that's why I come with a chocolate every time my daughters fall down. I come rushing with the chocolate. I can't stand that they're in pain. No, precisely. Maybe you should work some on yourself. It's like, right? But it is just that. It is, and he's like, again, awareness is so crucial to like when I come to see this, then when I come to see it and when I start to work with it, when I start to deal with my shit, I can then be with my kid when my kid is in pain without stepping in, without fixing it, fixing them, fixing the situation, doing the thing, right? I can just be. And then I can be the vessel holding the void for them to let whatever needs to be in that void be. I don't have to, oh no, let's shrink
Mm.
this down really, 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 really tight so that you can get out of it immediately. And then I didn't, I avoided feeling that in me for more than 3 minutes. Woo! Mission accomplished. Not really, my friend. Not really, right? Because that's a denial. That's an avoidance. Um, but it can be tricky.
Yeah, it can be tricky. And if I were to go on out on a limb, I might even call this violent in a sense, in terms of like I've seen parents do this. Like the kid is trying to walk and then falls down, and the parent picks up the kid and he's like, "Oh my god, did you get hurt? Okay, look at the ground. The ground is bad. Like you hurt my child. We're gonna smack the ground." And they just start hitting the ground and convincing the child that the ground came up and smacked them in the face rather than the kid actually falling down and getting smacked in the face. Right. So now, and I'm aghast because I'm like, oh my god, like what have you done? Like for the rest of this child's life, you have inflicted this understanding that when things go wrong, in all likelihood, it's the environment's fault, it's the world's fault.
Yeah.
I
It's
am
an
not to blame.
external. Mm,
It's an external thing. So if I were the parent, I've essentially crushed the agency of this child because I've told the child that anytime things go wrong, it's never your fault. It's the world's fault. It's the environment's fault. It's the system's fault. You have no role to play in it. And you should expect to be cajoled, to be, you know, comforted, to be told that it's not your fault. And now this child is going to grow up forever through all its life, imagining that when things go wrong, blame the world, and look for someone to come and comfort you. And when that someone doesn't come because you're no longer a kid, no one wants to comfort an adult now because it's your ass on the line. And then you're like, oh my God, there's no one in my life. No one wants to help me. I am all alone. And I would take this back, right back to that one episode in its early childhood where the parent did this. And like I said, it's it seems like what everyone does, but it's also extremely violent in the sense that I have crushed my child's agency in that, one incident. And which of course which gets repeated over time because it's at least a year or two before the kid starts working, and during that entire time I'm building that into its psyche that shit goes wrong, it's not your fault, it's the world's fault, and you will get comfort.
And it is this way of the adult to try to find a reason, try to find an aid somehow. It's akin to kind of different, but akin to what parents can say. If you have a naughty kid, you say, "Oh, you'd better watch it, otherwise I'll call the police on you." Right? Which really is a bad thing to do, because even though I agree with you, this trust in institution contra the individual can be tricky. Ingraining in kids that police are bad and they will come for you because I'm bad and they will punish me. When shit hits the fan and that kid is out and something bad happens and there's a police, likelihood of the kid going to the police really, really slim. Sorry, dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cause I've been bad, and so they will it's like, that's really not what we want kids to do. We do want kids to do the opposite, right?
Yeah.
If they're left alone and, lost in a big square filled with people, if they see a police, that's who you want them to go to say, "Hey, I've lost mommy," right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you frighten them with the police,
Ah,
they won't.
they will.
They won't. Uh, and
Oh yes.
this is so fun because when we were, I'm guessing it might have been 2008. So my youngest was like 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, something around there. The family was at a Christmas market in Lübeck, I think, in Germany. Jam packed, you know. It's cold. It's a couple of degrees above Celsius. It's not snow and stuff, but it's cold. It's winter, and all of a sudden, Benjamin is gone. It's me and my husband and our daughter, who's 5 years older than him, and then Benjamin, 3, 4 years, and he's where the fuck has he gone? Jam packed with people. You go, heart starts racing, anxiety starts popping up. It's like, shit, what happened? So we kind of spread out and I think we retrace our steps. I don't remember really, but within 5 minutes, we'd found him because he'd gone to a stand, clever kid, a candy stand. And there was the man there, and he'd said, "I've lost my mommy," or, I'm lost. Mom and dad and my sister are gone, right? And the kid had given him some licorice and, was kind of getting ready to, okay, who do I need to call? The police or something, right? And then we came. And what happened was we had all had black jackets on, and everybody has those black jackets. So he'd found somebody with a black jacket, thought it was me or his dad, and just followed, right? Before, oh shit, it wasn't. And then found this candy man. Uh, but it makes me happy in a sense now thinking that we actually hadn't instilled on him and I haven't. And I might be shot for this, right? But people say I should have, but I haven't instilled in my kids that they should be really, really wary of strangers. Cause I find I see the reason why it could be a good thing, but I see more negatives of scaring people. Just like you say with the ground. It's like I don't want my kids to go around thinking that everybody is a potential bad person. It's like, no, I want my kids going around believing that most everybody is a potentially good person. I actually do. And he did. He found somebody who looked nice and he went and said, I'm lost in Swedish and he speaks German. It's like all's well that ends well, but again, beliefs, right? They are so powerful. They are so powerful. And we should, I want us to be just being aware of the power of them and that we can enforce them in so many ways, and just all of those ways serve. Some beliefs serve, some don't serve. So at least question your beliefs now and again when you see them. Does it serve me to think that I have to play and there's a right way to do it? No, it really doesn't, because it makes those situations much more tense than if I would just, okay, let's play, right? Totally
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. Like in this situation, when you said all's well that ends well, it's like the actions may have ended well, but the belief ended well because now Benjamin doesn't have this belief that that was a traumatic incident in my life. Because if he had believed that, oh my God, I'm lost and things are going to go wrong, then everyone who is not mom and dad around me is a potential danger, which means I am surrounded by danger, would have surely scarred his young, impressionable mind back then, right? And he would definitely carry it right up till now. Like, even if it's something that's just hidden and kept, it's still something he's going to carry. But right now, he may even be thinking of it as an exciting adventure. Guess what? Like,
Do you
I,
remember the time when?
yeah,
That's how he says it.
yeah, right. And that's incredible. Like, that's because, like you said, it's the belief that
Mm,
don't talk to strangers is an assumption that everyone in the world who is not like you and who is not your immediate family is going to not just hurt you, but they're out to destroy you, right? Because that's like a child can't see things beyond binary at that point of time. It's not going to think of a stranger as someone who just doesn't care for me. The moment you say don't talk to strangers, they're going to assume that the stranger is like a boogeyman, is like, this evil monster under my bed, is going to come and kill me, is going to like destroy me, and, is going to torture me, is going to kidnap me. Like, and then the fertile imagination goes into like, spinning these role play scenarios where the worst things happen to them, right? But like you said, like if you turn that into like, okay, strangers are people that you don't know, but when you say you don't know how good they are or how bad they are, right? Like, and that's when you leave room for serendipity, right? Like everyone now on Twitter is like, oh, this is so serendipitous. Like the world has always been serendipitous. You just discovered that you can get out of your comfort zone because the basic requirement for any playground is safety, but the best playgrounds are the ones that have danger in them,
mm,
right? That's when you find excitement. That's when you find possibilities to challenge yourself. That's when you find yourself on the edge because, like, why do we all love horror films? Like, I mean, look, a lot of people don't, but a lot of people do. Why do we always freak out when someone scares you and you're like, oh, right? And you're like, oh my God, what you scared the living daylights out of me. You're angry as fuck, but at the same time, you're like, that was
yeah,
a
you
good
like
one,
it. You like it.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And I feel like that's when you know that, that's an ideal playground. Like if it's only going to be safe all the time, it's a good playground, but it's a terrible playground to grow in because, you have ensured that there's no danger, But that also means you've ensured that there's no likelihood of growth beyond that confines of the mandala circle, right? But if you allow that element of danger, which is that your pen might slip out of the mandala circle, now what do? You don't try to come back in,
No,
because that's what everyone has told you, that if you ever find yourself out of the circle, come running back, right? Like, because, monsters lie out there. But now that you've found yourself out there, what can I do out here? What can I do with this? How can can I trace my path back? Do I build a new path? Do I find a new direction? What do I do? Do I create a new pattern of exploration? Right? That, if you can imbibe that in your child, wow, like, you couldn't possibly do anything better for them, because you have given them the perspective that the world is only as good or as bad. It's balanced. The scales are balanced. Probability is a different factor, right? Probability that good is going to happen to me isn't just 50%, and bad happening to me isn't just 50%. That's where it becomes complex, right? That's when complexity
yeah,
comes into the picture.
yeah,
But belief, it can be entirely in my agency, my level of belief. I can choose that, okay, my belief is that I'm out of my safe space, which means I am in danger, right? But that doesn't necessarily automatically mean that things are going to go wrong,
no, precisely.
right? And it's a very nuanced outlook, but I feel like, again, if you start playing on the edges of the playground and you keep slipping out of the circle every now and then, just by that experience of, just do it, just take action, right? And you keep falling in and out of the playground, and you keep having these little skirmishes with reality outside of the confines of your playground. Like, that's when you start developing these nuances for yourself. That's when the child starts experiencing juggling danger with safety, and then eventually finding the ideal ratio for each individual, right? Like, someone may say, I love adventure sport, like, and it thrills me, right? Someone else may say, hell no, I'm not even riding in an amusement park,
No,
right?
precisely.
My idea of a good time is just taking a long drive into the mountains with my GPS, with my map, knowing exactly where I am, with five
Yeah,
extra
yeah,
batteries and all of that. What?
yeah. Each to his own. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it brings Benjamin back again, my youngest. He has always been, he takes after his dad this way. He's always been very um, good in his body. He knows his body. He knows his limits. He knows he's like, he has a high body intelligence. Let's put it that way, right? So a couple of, a kilometer away, there's a playground where there's this, it's like a spider web going up that you can, with like wires, you can climb it. You can climb it inside or outside and stuff. And it goes up in a peak, and the top of that one is probably 10 meters high or something. So it's quite, I've been up there and my heart was surely racing. But when he was a little kid, he'd go up there, and I've tried not to put my that reaction in me. I've tried to keep it down, hidden, silent, succeeding maybe so now and again, but at least I've I've been aware enough to want to contain it, right? So he starts climbing up this net, coming up and going for himself. This is as high as I want to go, and coming down, right? So finding that distinction between safety and danger. It's like, okay. And he was probably, 3 meters higher than what I wanted him to be, right? But letting him find that, and coming back down again. So he's always been quite It's like I've never been afraid of him being so reckless that he, would break bones and fall off and down and stuff. It's like I've always had there's been a knowing in me that he has quite a good sense of his ability contra what he where he wants to go and the possible dangers or benefits of that. And
Ah,
and it's
so
and
in a
it's
way,
interesting because you can look at that from a bodily perspective. You can look at that intellectually. It's like that arena is available in all aspects of life, really.
it's amazing how his actions strengthen your belief in him
Yeah.
and your belief in him when you allowed him to just go
Yes.
up without, without chaperoning him, without leashing him constantly, also
Yeah.
strengthened his belief in his own wisdom to say, this is enough, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go further than this because the exact opposite thing happened in my life. Like, I mean, growing up, I would always push myself beyond the limits just to prove a point
Yeah.
to my parents, to my family, to my community, to everyone around me who didn't believe that I was wise enough to wander off on my own. And I would be like, fuck you.
Fuck 'em.
Just to prove you wrong, I'm going to go out into the wild and, like, it's my finger to the world. We're going to stick it to the man. Right. And this was like literally when I was like 5 years old, because like this is my earliest memories, and my earliest memories was of me constantly trying to do things which I was told not to do. Like,
Mm.
if you wanted me to do something, all you had to do was tell me not to do it. Right. So I was that kid who would just do everything that he was told not to do. And it's interesting, like now that I look at it, like the safer the playground that was built for me, the more I wanted to experience danger. Right. And because, like, I mean, wanting to experience danger is not like how we like to think of it. No human is really a thrill seeker. No animal, like I have had so many animals, no animal is a thrill seeker. No one is actually going out. The only reason some of us are what we think of as thrill seekers is because we've never had enough of it. We actually starved for it. Every other animal in the wild gets enough of thrill every single day because the wild is essentially a playground which offers safety as well as danger,
Yeah.
right? Nature, Mama Nature is exactly that. She's built this lovely playground for us, which has warmth and security and comfort and safety.
And
And
yeah, and the
shitload
rest.
of skills, right? Yeah. So I mean, and I think like it's especially in the world we live in, just speaking of the two in the same breath is already blasphemy, right? You can't be talking about safety and include danger in the same line, right? Like it's the antithesis of this. You can't talk about them in the same breath. But that seems to be the most harmonious way to raise an individual, be it kids, be it ourselves, right? If I continue to protect myself from every possible danger, I will never find the love, the excitement, the joy, the exploration, the serendipity of meeting new people, right? Because I'd just be like, okay, I know 7 people in my inner circle, I know 25 people in my outer circle, and this is it. Never going to talk to anyone out of this. And if I do, it's just going to be for work, right? Because that's the one thing that allows me to expand into the boundary of acquaintances who are colleagues, but still strangers, right? But that's about it. Anything out of that, I'm not going to want to talk to them. I'm not going to leave room for people to interact with me on that plane. But if I were to say, hey, and I feel like this is why as adults, we can't just walk up to someone and say, hey, would you like to play with me? But kids do that all the time. Like two kids in the playground don't need to know what they do, who they are, where they come from, who their parents are, what their parents do. Nothing. They could just walk up to someone and say, hey, want to play with me? That's all it takes. And in all likelihood, the answer is going to be yes, because We all love to play together. No one likes to play alone. Or if you have the option of playing with someone else, you would love to play with someone else. And I think like if we could break free from this need to identify ourselves before we interact with each other, just that one single change of not introducing ourselves before we begin to interact, right? And it's very funny, like every time I'm on, Zoom calls where there's a whole bunch of people introducing themselves, I'm just like, I never introduce myself. I'm just like, hey, I'm ready, and so I'm blah blah blah, and none of that gives you any insight into who I am as an individual because all the fun is gone. Like, if you know who I am, then why would you want to play with me? Because I feel like the reason we want to play with each other is because we want to explore, understand, and find out what's this person all about. Who is this individual? Who is this magical new person I've never met before? There's so much joy and excitement. If I just tell you, oh, I'm so and so, I'm from so and so, I'm this many years old, I do this for a living, and I do that, and I have this many people around me, and like, all right. And so, okay, now since you told me a little bit of yourself, I'm also going to tell you the same 5 points about myself. I mean, and then it's ridiculous. It's no longer a game. Then it's coming. What's your favorite music? What's my favorite music? Who's your favorite author? Who's my favorite author? Oh my god! I want to kill myself already.
It's fun. I love how your mind works. I just love it. And I want to say thank you for I you brought tears to my eyes when you spoke about how Benjamin's belief in himself increased my belief in him, how my belief in him increased his belief. It's like how that actually is that positive spiral where it is regenerative. And speaking about the safety and the danger in the same sentence brings me to anti-fragile, Taleb's, you know, concept, which is, I think, just that. If we are the safer my surroundings are, the more I pad myself and my life, the more fragile I get. Because if there then is something that shakes me up, I've lost the muscles to deal with this. I don't have the bone structures that can cope with that shock because I have not used it. I have kept it padded up for safety. Um, so that dance is vital, I think. And and just as what I then can perceive as this positive spiral with between me and Benjamin when he was a kid and his physical abilities strengthening our beliefs in each other, your story of your parents and the people around you not believing in you then makes you push it too far, putting yourself at harm's way for real in ways that I think can cause harm because you are pushing yourselves beyond what's kind of within your sphere of abilities, you know? And that can be truly dangerous. That can be life and death,
Yeah,
right? And how many people don't do just that? It's like go beyond their own limits because because I have to prove those fuckers wrong, right? And hopefully it turns out okay anyway, and then maybe
yeah,
you do have a leap, right? You do a frog leap so that your abilities all of a sudden are much wider than they would have been if you had done it in kind of tinier increments. But if it doesn't go right, it's like that eagle that, "Oops, nah, flapping, not for me."
yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
bam, okay, game over.
And that is so true because, like, if you look at it, this is why learning or education cannot be scaled or institutionalized, right? Because one man's meat is another man's poison, right? And because the limits that were drawn for me and the group of kids that I grew up with, like in the colony that I grew up with, was probably right for everyone else in that group. There was like a handful of kids I would cycle with, and everyone was happy stopping at the limit and then riding right back. Except for me, I wanted to go further. And the more I was told not to go beyond that line, the more I would try to go beyond that line. And it's because it was probably considered aberrant for an individual. If 9 out of 10 kids are happy and are not complaining, one kid complaining shouldn't have to change the system, right? But then it isn't about system, it is about the individual, right? And if you look at it, how can we develop this resilience, this anti-fragileness in ourselves if we're going to think of ourselves as averages, right? Because as an average, you can't find really who is fragile and who isn't fragile. Meaning, you're causing a system-wide change based on an aggregate which you just found by doing a bunch of statistics and figuring out, okay, on an average, this is the level to which kids climb, so we're not going to let them go beyond that, right? And then at the same time, because of that, we're also crushing the agency of the individual because the individual now starts believing that my capability lies in what the institution tells me and where the institution tells me it lies. Rather than me individually exploring, like Benjamin, and saying, okay, the system says go up to here, but Benjamin says he may go 2 steps further and then come back, right? But like if I start believing in the system more than I start believing in myself, then I'll hit this path and I'll come back and I'll never gonna go. I'll never reach my personal potential, which may be 3 steps ahead, right? And oh man, that is so scary. That is more scary than me being the bird that crashes and dies. Like I would rather, personally, I would rather be the bird that crashes and dies than the bird that never discovered its true potential of, how high it can fly, right? And this isn't even towards life. This can even be thought of towards death. I have a cat right now who's undergoing some sort of a liver issue, right? And who's been struggling. And for the last 2 weeks, she's been practically comatose, right? She can barely move. She just gets up, takes a sip of water, and then, just flops back and just lies there, unable to move. So I've been taking her to the vet, and the vet says, okay, we're going to start this medication and we're going to give her this. And she is more feral than domesticated, right? So she decides, I'm not going to be here anymore. Like, there's a whole bunch of cats. All of the cats are there. They come for their feeding time. They have the liberty to go where they feel like they can come back. They have enough spaces to hang around. They all, usually come to a certain place and they're waiting around, they're hanging around there. But this one in particular likes to be aloof, likes to be alone, even when she was in the best of health. Now, it's interesting with animals, when they know they're unwell, they keep clear distance of each other. They don't need to be told you've got to quarantine yourself, and they don't need the comfort of another animal saying you're going to be all right. And the other animals also find a certain kind of aversion in the sense they're not disgusted, but they find themselves automatically distancing from this one cat because I don't know. I'm guessing, speculating that this could be one of those survival mechanisms that says if one cat has a disease and I go there and I transmit the disease and everyone in the pack is going to get the disease. So we all are going to keep our distance from each other. So she just got up. I'm supposed to take her to the vet next morning. She's not there in the morning. She's nowhere. She just disappeared. Now, the possibility is she decided that it's her time and she's going to go. And she said, I would rather go with the dignity of death, dying like I would as an animal, quietly walking away into the woods, no one around, no fanfare, no ado, just fading away into the wild, right? Or maybe she thought that if I'm staying here and I would infect the rest of the cats and the rest of the cats would, maybe it's the inbuilt mechanism which just told her to walk away. And now I could have prevented that by caging her into a little box, not letting her go out because you need to take your medicine, you need to go to the doctor, you need to get this done. And I did give that a try. And then it struck me like, maybe she will survive, maybe she won't. No system that we have, no medical system gives us any amount of guarantee whatsoever. So maybe she will survive, maybe she won't. What am I doing in that period? Do I have the right? And if I do have the right, should I be confining her to this little box?
What am
Right?
I doing to her?
Yes. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to leave her in the box. And I kept her in the box and then I left the lid open and left the door open. I said, if you choose to, you
Yeah,
can go.
you're free.
I
Yeah.
spoke to her. I said, like, I like to believe that animals understand what we're speaking, even if they don't understand the language. So I said, hey, we can try to give this a shot. I will take you to the dog. We'll do what it takes. I'll rehydrate you. That's the best I can do. Out here, I'll take you there and get medicated and treated and all of that at the vet. And we're going to try to do all of this. We can do this together. If you want to give this a try, we'll do this together. If you want to walk away, if you don't want to do this, no
Doors
compulsion.
open. Hmm.
And she just left. It's been 2 days now. I've been like running around everywhere, searching for her left, right, center. I just can't seem to find her anywhere. Right? I've been looking anywhere else. Maybe she got killed by a dog or so, or maybe she just, laid down and died somewhere. So maybe even just looking around, sniffing, wondering if I can get the scent of her rotting body. Like none of it. Nothing's happening. It's just complete mystery. She just disappeared into thin air. I just can't find her. But I like to believe that each one of us, just like that young boy, had the agency to decide for himself what was safe and what was dangerous. This cat, at the end of her life, as a full grown adult, also desires and deserves the agency to choose to die the way she wishes. And I personally wouldn't like to do that. I mean, like, since it's animals, I can do this and I can even say it on record that, I chose to do this. I can't do the same thing with adults. I can't do this with my family members. I'd be behind bars if I had said that, they didn't want treatment, so I didn't give them treatment. They'd be like, what are you
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's system mandated treatment, right? And that's to me seems a tad violent in the sense that, in a way, we are seizing the agency, just like we do to kids. We seize from them the agency to make choices and decide how they want to live. From the old, we seize the agency to make choices on how they want to die.
Yeah. And it's interesting to kind of notice how schools, which are extremely influential in creating society and culture. That's what they do, right? So how schools, at least here in Sweden and I think elsewhere too, is like there are so many rules. You have to do this. You must not do that. You can't run in the hallway. You can't talk for the first 10 minutes when you're having your meal. You can't do this. You have to do that, this, that, and the other thing, which builds up this obedient characters who follow rules. And then when they're out climbing up and they don't know what the rule is, they have no they haven't had enough training in what does it feel like in me when I'm approaching the edges of my boundaries, of my agency, of my ability. They don't know. So they're looking around going, what's the rule? How
Yeah.
high can I climb? Right? Because I don't know. Because I'm not trained in figuring this out. It's like, I would much rather have a kid who doesn't follow rules, but who knows his own limits. What's my capability? What's my skill set here? How far can I push myself and still be within the not life and death range. Because, yeah, as a parent, I want them to kind of not go all the way there, right? Stay a couple of levels behind or this way to that border, right? It's like,
Yeah.
yes, I do want that for my kid, but that's what I want. I want them to have the sense of, oh, this particular stranger is giving me some really weird vibes. My gut is clenching. Maybe this is one of the one in a thousand who's potentially a really dangerous person that might want to harm me. Okay, listen, right? So training, like again, it's it's human nature to build systems. We do build system. That's what language is. It's a system, right? But in such a way that those systems helps us to find my boundaries, my limits, so that I know myself, so that I know when to stop, when to push, when to fall back. Like, yes, that's what I want to see. Um, and it's, here I am believing that it's dangerous to role play if I'm at a leadership training, right? So again, that's a symptom in me still locked into this. Here's some rules, and if you don't have the rules, I go into
Mm.
freeze. I can't do this because I don't know what the rule is. No, precisely. That's the point. What if there's no rule here? What would you do? Oh, then,
Ha. Ha,
right?
ha,
Then I
ha.
can find what's my edge.
Yeah. And it's like I was just thinking of this is exactly where we feel like as a child, if I am training my intellect for the first 20 years of my life, but I haven't been training my intuition at all, how can I depend on it now? Right? Like that's why it's so scary. Right. And yet we see this overwhelming desire with the whole post-strat movement. All the rationalists are now trying to become like post-rationalists are coming back and saying, ooh, so maybe there's something to woo after all, right? And everyone's trying to think like, ooh, so maybe there's something to this. Not knowing what there is, but still believing now that there's possibility that there's something to this, right? And even I feel like the same way with morality, like we like to teach our children this is the way you should think, this is good, this is bad. Like, oh my God, are you telling me kids don't know what is good or bad? Even if they don't, they can figure it out for themselves. And like, if I were to go back and raise myself as a kid again, in terms of survival, I would teach myself to seek first. If I want something, if I want food, if I want shelter, if I want clothing, I will seek it by asking for it. As simple,
Mm.
hey, I don't have something to wear. Could you give me a shawl? Like as simple as doing something like this, because I feel like most adults cannot ask for something because they got so trained to believe that unless I pay for something, I cannot ask for it. Right? Like, why? And then there's also the other extreme where they're like, if you were to give me your shawl, they'll be like, why are you giving me something? Like, what do you want from me? Right?
Yep.
Like, is there poison ivy in that shawl? Are you trying to poison me? Like, is there anthrax in it? Like, am I going to die? Like, there's so much paranoia over just accepting something. So I would start with this extreme of just asking for things. And I would go to the dark side and even teach myself to steal something. You're not going to give me a shawl? Okay, I am going to find a way to steal it. Because this to me is just drawing this boundary, like a bungee jumping cord, like between one polarity to the other, where if I want something, I can either ask for it. If I get it, awesome. If I don't get it, I can steal it, right? And as I keep exploring these two polarities, eventually I find my own middle path where I learn to share. You know what? I would like a shawl and I have a belt. Do you want to trade? right? Right. And this finds like, if I could do this as a trade, which is a fair trade because we exchange goods of equal value, or it could be a trade of just compassion. You give me a shawl and you're like, oh, you can keep the belt. No, thank you. But it's very nice. I hope you enjoy the shawl. Right. Now, because I've looked at both the extremes, I'm more comfortable exploring this middle path, which could veer more towards, it's not exactly 50-50, it could veer more towards accepting things out of love without really giving anything in return, or doing some sort of an exchange where, which is more in the lines of like business. And I feel like this is one of those spaces which I look at as play again. Like if I have two extremes, two polarities, and then I start like bouncing between the two like a pendulum, and eventually I find my middle path, right? I can't force the pendulum to stop at
There.
what, yeah, right there, right? But I can just, and I need to take it to the other extreme. If I'm stuck in one extreme, I need to move to the other extreme in order to eventually find that middle path. And to me, that's play. Like just
Mm.
bouncing between these extremes. I think it could be like a simple discussion where, okay, should we be vegetarian? Should we eat meat? Should we where should we worry about this? Should we not worry about that? Should we should we draw nail shoes into horses, or should we just let them roam free? Right? Should we put a bit on them? Like there could be anything. Like this is I feel like this is the moral, spiritual discussions that kids ought to be having as debates, rather than what do you think should be the constitution? Should we be ruling people as per this thing? Like, rather than look at case studies of the past, I feel like kids playing, one of the things of play is you're not studying the past, but you're studying the present moment. You're studying your responses, the other kids' responses, and the game in this present moment, whereas all of education outside of the playground is about a study of the past. This person has this theory that, this is what gravity means. This person, 100 years ago, came up with this theory. We're constantly got our noses shoved up our asses because the ass is the past. And like you're constantly looking at your asshole instead of looking at the horizon, right? Like when you're playing in the moment, you're looking outside of yourself. But I feel like we spend way too much time looking at our own assholes. And by asshole, I mean history. Like history is the past, our assholes are behind us. And like that's what we're constantly doing. And that's why, I have this beef with traditional education systems as avant garde as they claim to be, even the new age ones, which says, oh, we have a more unique system. We're not like the rest of them. I feel like as long as your focus is not in the present moment and is not curriculum based but curiosity based, which is just play, you can't say, you know what, we have decided that there are five streams of curiosity and kids can choose. No, fuck that.
Kind
You're
of one.
still doing the same thing,
Yeah.
you're just painting it in a
Yeah.
different light.
Yeah. There's a lot of that, though. A lot of this. This isn't really working, so let's do some more of it. It's like, yeah, no. I just saw it flashing by a headline yesterday. One of the Swedish political parties is now suggesting after school for kids who aren't coping in the real school, in the school, and who don't have parents that can help them. They should have after school. Yeah, or not. Like not. Like we have in Sweden, I think the number of kids who leave ninth grade, which is kind of the mandatory, it's 10th grade now because they made a pre-year mandatory. So it's 10
Mm,
years of mandatory schooling. There's like 3 in 10 kids leave from there without basically knowing how to read and write.
wow.
That's
Wow.
30%.
Wow.
What
Wow.
the fuck? Or at least it's 30% who don't have approved grades in the four basic subject or most important subjects: Swedish, math, English, and something else. I don't remember. It's like 30% are failing to get those required grades that you have to do to be able to step on. It's like, okay, let's do some more school then.
Nah.
Really? Should we do more school then? Something's not working. Let's do more of it. It's like maybe there's a place for that, but maybe there isn't a place for that,
Yes.
you
And
know?
maybe they could even consider the opposite, right? Like maybe, just maybe, look at the other extreme. If you think that they need more school, what if you also consider the fact that they need less school and more
Precisely.
play, right? Like,
Yeah, precisely.
I think the other day I wrote a thread on the idea that if I were to like retrain myself, go through the education system and train myself, I would just start from the need to learn, right? Like I just said, the need to learn, the have to learn, and the want to learn, right? Most people never even get to what they want to learn. It's just like a have to learn. And they also don't get to learn what they need to learn,
No.
which is why most individuals are incapable of survival in the world without those rules. Their own
Yeah.
intuition is underdeveloped. And like I would just start from, I like to look at it from the simple perspective of feeding, fucking, and fighting, right? Like if I think if I feed myself,
Here's the three F's. We had
three
the four
apps.
F's last time. This is the three F.
Right? And just think of it, like the first F was feeding, which I said, like I would either seek by asking, hey, can you give me some food? And I would probably, if you don't give me your food, I would learn to steal your food. And then as I learned both those capabilities, I would learn to find a balanced middle path where I'd be like, okay, I could give you this and we could trade off, or, I don't have anything, but it would be really nice if we give you something. And then when it comes to fucking, like, I feel like we are extremely incapable of communicating honestly as individuals, either physically, which is intercourse, which is verbally, like, just engaging with each other honestly, right? Like me sharing what I want, what are my desires, what are my fears, honestly sharing myself with another human being is so rare. I could talk about the weather, I could talk about politics, I could talk about sports, I could talk about a whole bunch of things. But God forbid I have to talk about myself with you. Like that is like, I didn't know we had signed up for this. Right. And I feel like that's what comes to mind when I think of like physical intercourse, which is again something that kids never experience because like we're constantly like, okay, it's not your time, it's not your age, even though it's a
Shame,
primal
shame, shame,
curiosity.
shame, shame,
Yeah.
shame, shame,
Shame,
shame.
shame, shame. My God, no, that's violent as well because now the child is left thinking, oh my God, is this bad? Is this evil?
Yeah.
Am I, me touching myself, is this bad? Me touching someone
Yeah.
else, is this bad? Like, allow the kid to discover and make its own mistakes. Like, okay, am I going too far in my exploration? Is my exploration turning into exploitation of the other person? Oh, that this is, I'm going too far, right? Is the other person's exploration turning into an exploitation of me? Am I letting them take me for a ride?
Yeah.
Oh, then this goes too far. And I feel like if we put in those rules in between, they will never discover that nuance in between,
Precisely.
right? And this is not just from a sexual context, but also from a social context. Me
Mm.
engaging with people, conversing with them, relating with them, being a part of the community. What can I contribute? What can I get from you? What can I give you? Right? All of this counts as, again, some sort of an intercourse of sorts, right? It's not just between two bodies, it's between two individuals in a larger community. How can we all have this, confluence of interaction between each other? All of that to me comes under this grand bracket of fucking, right? So the second F just falls under intercourse of all sorts, whether it's social or sexual. And then the third one is fighting. The idea of conflict is again something that most kids are so averse to, right? Either it's like, oh my God, he's going to bully me and I'm too scared. I can't take care of myself. Or I've been bullied, so I'm going to bully the other kids. And I can't think of anything else to do because nobody's going to stop me, right? And it's just like kids, I feel like both are victims. Like we don't look at the bully as a victim in the standard narrative of things, right? Because the bully is the villain, but both are victims here because neither knows that they're prisoners of their own inability to move beyond a certain stuck mindset or perspective. And I feel like me learning to fight for myself, for my friend, for my family, for my fraternity is a vital skill. Whether it's standing up and just making a statement verbally, whether it's physically jumping into the playground and defending someone, which means I may have to hurt someone else in order to defend a certain someone, but knowing that these are trade offs that one must make if one wants certain consequences or desired outcomes, something I need to know the ability of how to do that, right? And the other aspect is fighting for life. Like, why is it that we have so many individuals passing out of the system, learning subjects like physics, science, math, chemistry, all of this, and first aid is not something that anyone learns as a mandatory subject? When how can isn't that doesn't that sound utterly ridiculous that someone has to actually go ahead and do a first responder course somewhere in their adulthood? If at all, 1 in 100 people would probably do that and forget it because it's just a 3-day course which they did on a weekend. Like, how is it that we allow kids to reach the age of 20, come out of a system of education not knowing how to save someone's ass if they got hit by a truck down the road?
Mm.
Like, it's ridiculous. Like, fighting for someone's life, which means the ability to harm and the ability to heal. I feel like these are skills that I need to have, right? And from this bedrock of skills that I need to have, can grow the curiosity of skills that I want to have. Maybe I find that I'm like you said, like you mentioned about a person being an empath, right? And maybe I find that the medical field of me helping someone, you know, reached out the most to me because I'm an empath at heart, right? So now I decide, okay, now I can get into a field, I can pursue these streams of curiosity where I can choose to be a healer, an empath, a therapist, a nurse, a doctor, like there's a number of streams, right? I could go esoteric, I could go, modern Western medication, I could go any number of ways, but I am now starting from a place of where I have basic skills of survival, and now I choose skills that will help me find my own calling, be true to my own self, while yet being a confident, capable, contributing member to the community. Right. It seems like so much, but it feels to me like a very simple bedrock of education rather than just having a bunch of 10 subjects. You must now learn these 10 subjects, and if you learn these 10 subjects, then you can go learn another 5 more subjects, and then another 3 more subjects, and then you turn into a fucking robot by the end of it. And no one really likes what you've
With
learned.
no
No one,
life skills, with
no
no life
life.
skills at all, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I listened again to My Ishmael over the weekend. My Ishmael by Daniel Quinn. Have you read Ishmael?
No, 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 no.
Okay, so three books that I think you would love. You would love. Um, Ishmael, the story of B, and then My Ishmael. And My Ishmael is the third one, and to me the best one. And they all of them came out as unabridged audiobooks in the summer, and I bought My Ishmael. And I've listened to it once. I've read it once or twice already this year before that, but I listened to it over the weekend. It's almost 9 hours, so it's doable, right? And they speak about the education system quite a lot. And one of the things that Ishmael shares is just this, that in the old days, like before systematic education that has been around for the past 250 years or so, kids learned life skills because they tagged along their parents. If their parents was a farmer, they learned how to farm. If their parent was a hunter, they learned how to hunt. If their parent was a
Black.
smith,
Yeah.
they learned how to do blacksmithing. It's like, so they learned skills that once they were kind of okay, now you're an adult, whether that be at age 10, 12, 15, or 20, they knew how to live. They could survive. They had basic survival skills. They knew these life skills. Today, if if you know all adults were to just disappear and you would have kids, good luck, kids. It's like, how they don't know how to snare a hare or how to breed chickens or how to boil an egg, or it's like I'm kind of pushing the envelope a little bit, right? But basically what school teaches us today doesn't have any survival basis. Like you say, it doesn't it's like void of that. That's not it, right? We learn all of these mental things, arithmetic and calculus and geometry and geography and shit and stuff, right? But I don't know how to survive. I don't know how to knit. I don't know how to make yarn. I don't know these things. Um, and it's kind of built into the system that this is the way it should be. Um, and the discussion in the book just continues, but this synced so well with your three Fs. Um, that it's interesting how we have set up a system that is so void of void of actual value in a sense. And I'm not saying, I love to read or write so it's not that I don't see the value in it. But again, life skills is something else, like being able to survive. And this is one of the things that I've been quite happy that, I do know how to knit and mend things, and I know how to dry stuff and, pick wild plants. And, it's like there's a certain level of life skills that I have, um, which, makes me go, oh, feels good. That that's a belief I have in me that I would be able to manage. I know how to make a fire, right? It's like there's stuff that really, oh yeah, this feels good. Um,
And we feel connected, right? In a sense, you're connected with the world, connected with the knowing that if I just have the skills to edit an Excel sheet, like that would make me valuable only in an environment where people use Microsoft Excel or a spreadsheeting tool of sorts. But that isn't the world that we inhabit, right? Like we may have confined ourselves to this digital world, but the the real physical IRL in real life world hasn't gone away, right?
no,
And having digital skills is no excuse for not having physical skills, right? And the physical skills are always the physical first layer. I couldn't use Excel if I didn't have fingers to type with. I couldn't use it if I didn't have a body. I couldn't use the computer if I didn't have a body to manipulate the computer with, right? And I couldn't have a mind if my body wasn't fed. My computer mind wouldn't be able to function if I didn't have food in me, and I wouldn't be able to think straight enough to program. So
mm,
the the emphasis on understanding that the physical world is a vital foundation is so important to remember, especially now when we're moving into the whole Web3 space, the crypto space, where everything is going to and we all pumped up and juiced up on the idea that we can change systems, we can take back control of systems back to the people and all of that stuff. There's so much enthusiasm, excitement, and energy in the world right now, especially amongst the young, that I feel it's even more important to remind and remember that the physical is always going to be that first foundational layer, right? And we build everything upon that. And same way with education, the survival skills are always going to be the base layer, right? And it's a shame that all of these skills that I spoke about is something that I had to constantly ask myself, how can I learn these? And I had to remind and remember that these are desires not just of myself as an individual that I want to learn these, but I need to learn these. Like, I would love to be with someone just chilling, not doing anything, not having to worry about anything. But if something goes wrong, I would like to have the skills to be able to survive that situation so that I can go back to doing absolutely nothing with my life. Right. And it's amusing and amazing that if I want to learn or if I want to do something, there are things that I need to do in order to do the things that I want to do.
Mm. Yeah, and again, it's that, or again, but it's that cycle, you know, that it is connected. It's like it isn't, life isn't what modern school makes it out to be. Here's math and here's geography. It's like, no, that that is, and in the same time, it isn't either what Western medicine makes it out to be. Here's a heart, and here's a liver, here's a pair of lungs. Sorry, but a heart in and of itself is really worthless. Yeah, you can eat it, but that's about it, right? It's like, so again, the whole, the way that everything is connected, the relating aspect of it, right? It is the relating aspect of it that makes it pulse, that gives it life.
Yeah.
Um,
Connecting everything together, right? Like that idea that, and I feel like that's another reason why, as individuals, you see so much loneliness, alienation, disconnection, and yet at the same time, this constant craving for community. Oh, let's form a community on Twitter, let's form a community on Circle, let's get together and have this little connection together. Because we're all so lost as individuals from a larger, like this whole idea of purpose, right? What's my meaning? What's the meaning of my life? What's my purpose in life? Like, it's amusing because there is no my purpose in life, because in a way, like, my purpose and our purpose is essentially survival. At a bottom level, is just to survive. Like, how can I think of having any purpose if I'm not alive? And if I'm the only one left alive and everyone else around me dies, then I would feel empty anyways, right? So my purpose and my meaning is so deeply intertwined with your purpose and your meaning and our purpose and our meaning. And this understanding never comes through. Like the other day, I think just a couple of days ago, we were talking on Twitter, and someone was saying that, the Indian education system teaches people to be very individualistic and think of themselves, whereas Western education systems teaches people to be more cohesive and work together and, come together as a community. And it was interesting that even if the education systems, I didn't quite buy that, but even if the education
no.
systems were so different, the larger community in terms of festivals, interactions, larger joint communities, joint families, and, larger groups of individuals, and all of this coming together is a sense of community that already was there for ages, right? Whether it was in a small tribe, whether it was in a large kingdom, whether it was just a couple of people surviving in the wild somewhere, the idea of us connecting is something that is primal and universal since forever, right? Across cultures. It's got nothing to do with the East or the West or anything of that sort.
Yep.
And today, if I were to ask myself, what's my purpose? What's my meaning? What's my dreams? What do I want to do? I'm still disconnected if it's not connected in some way with my immediate community around me, right? In some way, if I can start by initiating this process right in the beginning, right from the earliest level, which is why I feel like the kindergarten, the playground being the center of our learning universe is vital and is a necessary experience that the library should not be the center of the universe, the learning universe, but the playground, because the playground is where everything comes together. You may have
Mm,
skills of geography and math, but if you bring it to the playground, now you can figure
mm,
out how to choose how much of an area each person is going to
mm,
get to play, right? And now, if you take that, if you continue growing in the playground, by the time you reach your graduation level, you know how to do the same thing in a larger surface area of land. So now, when you know, five people can go into the forest and decide we're going to map this area like this, and we're going to use all those skills that we learned in trigonometry. There seems to be a growth of continuity, that connection between ideas, between knowledge, between individuals, and between, the larger planet that we inhabit. All because all of these games happen at a micro level in the playground, any which way between kids.
mm. You know what? We'll leave it there
Yeah.
because we've been going more than 3 hours. This is the longest one yet. Um, but I
It's
think
the
it's a good
tiara.
place to leave. Yeah, because it's like that playground image. I would love to bring that with me. I know you are constantly bringing it with you, but also if listeners, like, keep the playground with you. How can you step into that? How can you create a playground in wherever you are, right? Whatever the situation, be it in a boardroom, a classroom, in the kitchen, in the bedroom,
Yeah.
outside. It's like, how can you how can you open up to the playground? It is a lovely, you know, it's like an ask. Keep the playground with you, right? It is an ask.
Yeah.
It's like, do that. See what happens.
It
Yeah.
it it's kind of like right now when you said that, it's an invitation to everyone listening to come and play with you. Just
Yeah.
by throwing that ask out there, you're saying, "Hey, you want to play?" Right? Two simple
Yeah.
words. "Hey, you
Yeah.
want to play?" And it's just as simple as that. It's such a
Yeah.
simple ask. It's such a universal ask, right? Because play is something that cuts across boundaries, borders, cultures, religions, ages, hierarchy, status, all of that, like, right? Like it's yeah. So yeah, it's a beautiful ask.
Wanna play. Let's leave it at that. Thank you, Reddy. It's
Thank you
been
so much. You have a
absolutely
lovely day.
playfully gorgeous.
Yeah.
Um, I wonder if I will keep my tiara on me. I have two more Zoom calls today. One where I am in that consultant role, and one with a newfound friend. And then I have a meeting this evening about a community garden. So maybe I'll do tiara today.
Awesome. Beautiful. Well, thank you for wearing that tiara because it's just completely made my day. Like I feel like I'm in the presence of royalty, like through the entire call, right? And it just feels so incredible that something as like we have seen people, talking about halos over our heads, and all it takes is just adding, something that signifies, symbolifies that, this is your aura, that aura of that beautiful, resplendent, tiara that you're wearing around you, right? And it kind of reflects in your smile as well. Everything just seems like it's just fitting in all together.
It is.
Beautiful.
It is. I love it. Thank you for today.
Thank you. You have a lovely day.